In my past life, I got an extra bowl of rice in the cafeteria, and the cafeteria lady chased after me, yelling that I was always trying to get freebies and steal food. My classmates started insulting and ostracizing me, and someone even posted about me on the campus forum. The school decided I was a bad influence and revoked my merit-based scholarship and graduate program recommendation. They even expelled me outright just to protect the school's reputation. When my parents went to the school to find out what happened, strangers dragged them into an alley and beat them to death. Their bodies weren't found until they started decomposing. Overwhelmed by grief, I accidentally set my house on fire, and the raging flames quickly consumed everything around me. I sat dazed amidst the raging flames, utterly baffled at how someone with such a promising future like me had ended up like this. In a flash of firelight, I was transported back to the beginning of this tragedy. A burly hand clamped tightly around my wrist. "Come and see, a university student actually stealing rice from the cafeteria. You look like a decent girl, but I never expected you to be a thief. I've seen you do this several times, and I've finally caught you red-handed. Today, I'm going to do the right thing and rid your school of this scum of society." A familiar voice rang in my ears. I stared in disbelief at the cafeteria lady in front of me. The searing pain from being consumed by flames still tingled across every inch of my skin. In my past life, she had also publicly grabbed me and refused to let me leave, just because I took 2 bowls of rice during mealtime. She started loudly proclaiming throughout the cafeteria that I was a thief. Not only did she make a scene in the cafeteria, but she also threatened to report me to my academic advisor. No matter how much I tried to explain, she just wouldn't believe me. It even drew a crowd of classmates who started pointing fingers and whispering about me. "Seriously, stealing cafeteria rice? You really can't judge a book by its cover. Stay away from people like that. Today they're stealing rice. Tomorrow they might steal your academic papers. How could our school have such an embarrassment of a student? Get out of our school. Get out of our school." The chorus of insults continued to echo in my ears. This whole tragedy started with that cafeteria lady's false accusation. I stared at her with bloodshot eyes. "This time, I won't just sit back and take it." The cafeteria lady kept looking at me with that same haughty expression. "You're still so young. Of all the things you could have learned, you chose to steal. This is one of the nation's top institutions. How did someone like you even get admitted? What's your major? I'm going to report this directly to your academic advisor. How dare you glare at me? You should be apologizing for what you did, not giving me attitude." She stood with one hand on her hip, chin held high, trying to intimidate me with her imposing presence. Even the slanderous accusations she hurled at me were word-for-word identical. I suddenly laughed. Did she still think I was the same pushover from my past life? I forcefully shook off her hand, losing her balance. She landed hard on the ground, staring at me in wide-eyed shock before letting out a sudden, piercing scream. "Help, ouch, someone's hitting me. A student from Jing University is assaulting me for no reason. Is there no justice anymore? Someone grab that thief. She stole from the cafeteria and is trying to run away. Someone help me, please." The cafeteria was at its busiest during the lunch hour. Her cries quickly drew a crowd of students. Seeing the gathering crowd, the cafeteria lady's eyes flashed with triumph before she immediately resumed her theatrical sobbing, pleading for someone to take her side. "Someone grab that thief. Don't let her get away." The moment those words were spoken, every pair of eyes in the room locked onto me. While the cafeteria lady was throwing a hysterical fit, I remained perfectly still, calmly watching her performance. In my past life, no matter how many times I pleaded, it wasn't me. Nobody was willing to believe me. Everyone treats me like a petty thief who's always trying to get something for nothing. In that case, maybe it's time to change my approach. I looked at the cafeteria lady still sitting on the floor and smiled. "What proof do you have that I stole anything from the cafeteria? In my past life, I could never figure out why. I didn't even know this cafeteria lady, let alone have any grudge against her. Why would she set me up like this? It's as if her sole purpose was to destroy me." Everything clicked into place when I saw the name tag on her chest. Aunt Judy was taken aback, not expecting me to fire back a question. When falsely accused, most people's first instinct is to deny it. With the crowd egging her on, the rumor was bound to stick. Little did I expect that I'd actually ask her for proof. She just stared at me, speechless for what felt like ages. I don't have the patience to wait for her to think it through right now. What? Can't produce evidence, so you're just making things up, Aunt Judy. Spreading rumors is illegal, you know. Aunt Judy waved her hands nervously at the mention of illegality. No, no, I'm telling the truth. Her eyes suddenly darted toward my plate. The next second, she pointed at the tray in my hand. This is it. This is the evidence. You took 2 bowls of rice from the cafeteria and still deny stealing. She looked at me with sudden confidence. Hearing her reply, I suddenly laughed. All this over 2 bowls of rice, exactly, with all this evidence. I'd like to see you try to deny it. You're a thief through and through. Hearing this, I put down my tray and gave Aunt Judy a round of applause. He looked at me, completely baffled. According to Aunt Judy's logic, anyone who takes 2 bowls of rice is stealing from the cafeteria. Looks like that senior student behind you got himself 3 bowls of rice. Everyone turned to look at the senior student. The senior student froze mid-bite, looking awkwardly at everyone. And that junior over there, she took 2 bowls too. She's definitely what you'd call a rice bandit. Everyone turned to look in unison. My junior shot the onlookers an annoyed glare. Don't be so provincial. Can't I just enjoy my rice? That's when Aunt Judy started to panic. I couldn't resist pointing out. Seems like this cafeteria has quite a few light-fingered patrons. You might need to keep a sharper eye out, Aunt Judy. The provocation was unmistakable. Aunt Judy was absolutely livid. Those other students all paid with their cards. They actually paid for their tickets, unlike you. It suddenly clicked. Oh, I see, I said. I deliberately raised my voice, my tone sharp with cold accusation. But I swiped my card too. Why is Aunt Judy accusing me of stealing food? And she's making such a scene about it, practically telling everyone I'm a thief. I stepped closer to Aunt Judy and said, "Why are you trying to frame me?" In just a few minutes, our roles had completely reversed. Aunt Judy stared at me in stunned silence, frozen in place as she nervously clutched her clothes. That's nonsense. You never even swiped the card. Unfortunately, her guilty conscience had already given her away. This time, no one spoke up in her defense. At my suggestion, we checked the card reader in front of everyone, too. My transaction history is crystal clear. The debit record plainly shows I was charged for 2 bowls of rice. In that moment, everything became clear. Aunt Judy looked at me awkwardly, forcing a smile that was even more pitiful than a frown. Perhaps Auntie remembered wrong. I'm apologizing to you. Isn't that enough? It was just a small misunderstanding. Why are you being so petty? I remembered how she had ruined me beyond recognition just to satisfy her own selfish desires. So I hardened my heart. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't just say whatever you want. If everyone could go around slandering others, what would be the point of having laws? Seeing that I wouldn't let her off the hook, Aunt Judy decided to throw caution to the wind. You, a college student bullying a defenseless old woman like me, didn't your teachers teach you to respect the elderly and protect the young? How shameful. Oh, what a miserable life I've had, worked hard all my years, only to be bullied by these brats in my old age. I raised an eyebrow at this scoundrel and said, "Our teachers taught us to respect the elderly and cherish the young, and they also taught us to punish evil and promote good." This time, even if Aunt Judy cried her eyes out, no one felt sorry for her anymore. I immediately called over the cafeteria manager and reported her for not only skimping on portions but also falsely accusing students of taking extra food. The cafeteria manager fired Aunt Judy on the spot. She slumped to the ground in frustration, glaring at me with murderous eyes. "You little brat, just you wait." I met her homicidal gaze head-on. The real show was only just beginning. This time, I'll return every ounce of pain you've inflicted on me, unchanged and in full. The moment I stepped back into the dorm room, Leona sidled up to me. "Nancy, you don't seem like the type to pull shady stunts. What made you steal food from the cafeteria?" My roommate started to defend me, but I stopped her before she could explain. "Oh, how did you hear about me stealing food from the cafeteria?" Leona looked at me with a smug expression. "It's all over the campus network. Don't even try to deny it. You never really know what's in someone's heart. She always acted so proper. But who would have thought she's a thief?" Then she turned to my roommate and added, "You guys should stay away from her too. People who are always looking to take advantage of others. Who knows when they might steal from us? Better be careful." In my past life, Leona had slandered me with similar exaggerated stories. Eventually, my roommates started keeping their distance from me because of the rumors, but this time, Aunt Judy didn't get her way. A post accusing me of stealing food from the cafeteria was still up on the campus forum. The culprit was obvious, if I was only about 30% sure before. Now I'm at least 70 to 80% certain. Leona and Aunt Judy share the same last name. No wonder in my past life, anything that happened in the cafeteria would spread throughout the school in an instant. They didn't even give me a moment to prepare before pinning that baseless accusation on me. The school even revoked my merit scholarship over this, and the one who took over was Leona, who's now gloating about it. Ignoring Leona's taunts, I instead asked her curiously, "Do you know that spreading rumors is illegal?" Far from feeling guilty, Leona responded with unapologetic defiance. "The online post is absolutely accurate, down to the last detail. Come on, Nancy, you can't own up to what you did. The cafeteria lady caught you red-handed. This is an open and shut case. Someone with your terrible character should just wait to get expelled." All the roommates were staring strangely at Leona. At the mention of expulsion, my pupils contracted. And I fixed Leona with an unblinking stare. Theft can be a serious offense, but it can also be treated as a minor issue. Many schools opt for verbal warnings or disciplinary records to protect the school's reputation. Such matters are often swept under the rug whenever possible. The school probably expelled me without hesitation because Leona filed a complaint. That thought made my blood boil even more. Ignoring Leona, I took out my phone right in front of her and dialed 110. "Hello, officer. Someone at my school is spreading rumors about me, and I'd like to..." Before I could finish, Leona snatched my phone and hung up. "Nancy, have you lost your mind?" Everyone in the dorm room turned to look at Leona in unison. I crossed my arms and gave her a scrutinizing look. "I'm just trying to find the person behind the rumors. Why are you so nervous?" After a deliberate pause, I feigned surprise. "Don't tell me you're the one who wrote those gossip posts online." Leona retorted without a second thought. "What absolute nonsense. I just think for such a trivial matter, why bother involving the police? Since it's just a rumor, why don't you just contact the poster to have it removed?" I looked at her with amusement. "Then I'll leave it to you, Leona, to get it deleted as soon as possible." I used a straightforward affirmative statement. Leona didn't even try to argue further. My sharp glare alone was enough to silence her. "I already told you it wasn't me. Since we're roommates, I'll help you figure something out." With those words, she dashed out of the dorm room. 3 minutes later, that post slandering me had vanished without a trace. Staring at Leona's empty bed, I fell deep into thought. There's no way someone as greedy as Leona would ever let me off the hook. As it happened, I dug up quite a bit about Leona. Leona had only left the post up for less than half an hour before deleting it. So no one really paid it any mind. To my surprise, I ran into Aunt Judy again the next day when I went to the cafeteria. The only difference from yesterday was, yesterday full of vigor, today haggard and worn. The moment they saw me, their eyes lit up. Without a second thought, they rushed over and dropped to their knees right before me. "Nancy, please have a heart and give me a way out. I misunderstood what happened yesterday. I'll apologize however you want. Just please don't let the cafeteria fire me. I have elderly parents and young children to support. My whole family depends on this job to get by." Then, ignoring the stares from everyone around, he started to kneel and bow. "I'm begging you, please give me a chance to survive. I swear I'll never do it again." All eyes were on me again. Some bystanders who didn't even know what was going on started pointing and whispering about me. "That poor woman, it's not like she did anything terrible. Taking away someone's livelihood like that is just wrong." I never expected Nancy to be so ruthless. She just had the cafeteria fire that person outright. We should probably keep our distance from her from now on. Not only that, but quite a few self-media bloggers had already pulled out their phones to start live streaming. It's obvious they were deliberately brought here. I curled the corner of my lips. "So this was your goal all along? To pin the blame on me for bullying an elderly person and ruin my reputation? In that case, let's give them a taste of their own medicine." I ignored the skeptical voices around me. I just plopped down on the floor right in front of Aunt Judy. "If we're going to take photos, let's go all out." I rested my chin on my hand and asked curiously, "So Auntie Judy, what exactly did I do to upset you?" Auntie Judy froze for 2 seconds before slowly blurting out, "Yesterday. I mistakenly thought you'd taken food from the cafeteria without paying, but that was such a trivial matter. I never expected you'd go for the jugular over it. Oh, and how exactly did you come to that conclusion about me? Aunt Judy stared at me with a bewildered look and said, she had no idea what I meant by that question. Let me explain. Yesterday, Aunt Judy accused me of stealing food from the cafeteria. Normally, the first thing anyone would do is check the card swipe records. If a payment was missed, they'd just ask the student to pay for it later, right? The surrounding students nodded in agreement. So what did Aunt Judy actually do? Aunt Judy was just crying her eyes out with a face full of remorse, but in an instant, her expression turned frighteningly dark. Instead of verifying the facts, this cafeteria lady started yelling in the dining hall, calling me a lunch thief. I looked at her with feigned confusion. Why? It's almost as if you're deliberately trying to frame me. 3. Aunt Judy, who had been so articulate just moments ago, suddenly started stammering, and no deliberate framing you or anything. I just forgot. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? The onlookers immediately grasped the crux of the matter. The sympathy that had been overflowing just moments ago was suddenly withdrawn by everyone. I then followed up by asking, was I the one who fired you? Aunt Judy was about to say, no, but swallowed her words and changed her response. If it weren't for you, would the boss have fired me? She was still so self-righteous, completely unaware that the people around her were looking at her differently. Apologize. Our entire conversation was being live-streamed by a self-media influencer holding a phone. Everyone clapped and cheered in approval. The live stream that was supposed to be my trial quickly turned overwhelmingly in my favor. Did you notice how that cafeteria lady keeps contradicting herself? She's definitely shady. Why would she frame Nancy like that? Probably trying to extort some money out of this situation. I'm terrified that someone with such ill intentions might slip something into our food. The university made the right call. People like that deserve to be expelled. With the truth now clear, the onlookers lost interest in watching any further. They gained no benefits from this. Only widespread notoriety. Aunt Judy has certainly made a name for herself, though I doubt anyone will want to hire her after this. I couldn't help but chuckle at her bewildered expression, leaning in to whisper by her ear, Leona is your daughter, isn't she? Aunt Judy stared back at me, completely taken aback. Despite their airtight secrecy, I still managed to uncover some telltale clues. You really shouldn't hold this against me. Your daughter Leona taught me everything herself, otherwise. How could I have so easily exposed your lies? Leona told me she wants to see your reputation utterly destroyed. The moment I finished speaking, I saw the murderous look in Aunt Judy's eyes. Isn't it more entertaining when the fight turns inward and the trouble gets redirected? Aunt Judy immediately scrambled up from the ground and stormed off toward the girls' dormitory. I followed closely behind her. Leona had just reached the dormitory building when the woman grabbed her by the hair and dragged her into a deserted alley. Before Leona could even process what was happening, the woman slapped her across the face. You shameless little bitch, have you grown wings? How dare you conspire with outsiders against me? Mom, I didn't. Leona tried to argue back, but Aunt Judy beat her black and blue before she could get a word out. Still seething with rage, she started kicking and pinching Leona. You worthless brat, if I hadn't listened to your stupid advice, I never would have tried to frame Nancy. Now look what happened. I lost my job, all my money, and even my dignity is gone. What do you expect me to do? What future do you think your brother will have? I'm warning you, if you cause any more trouble, I'll sell you off myself. Study, 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 this damn education is worthless. Then she viciously kicked Leona again with her foot. I don't care how you do it. But get my money back, or you'll regret it, you little brat. With that, she turned and strutted away, nose in the air. Leona slumped to the ground, completely drained and motionless. Her face and arms were covered in scratches. The moment I was reborn, I immediately looked into Leona's family background. A biased mother, a gambling-addicted father, and a good-for-nothing younger brother. A textbook example of a son-preferring family. It's nothing short of a miracle that Leona managed to make it to university. In the past, I might have sympathized with Leona's plight and done what little I could to help her. Unfortunately, having learned from my past life, I withdrew my compassion for her, understanding that the pitiful often have their own despicable traits. I never harmed her, yet she was the one who ended up causing my death. In my previous life, Leona showed me no mercy whatsoever. It was only later that I discovered the reason why. Our school offers a scholarship program with substantial awards, tens of thousands each year. Because of me, no matter how hard Leona tried, she could only ever come in second, and second place meant no money. Without that scholarship money, her family gave her endless grief and even made her drop out of school, so she set her sights on me. If I were to leave school or get into trouble, that money would naturally end up in her hands. And she saw me as nothing but an obstacle. She wanted to escape her family, but she didn't hesitate to sacrifice me in the process. Too bad, this time I won't be used as a stepping stone anymore. After recording the evidence, I put away my phone and strolled back to the dorm. It wasn't until sunset that Leona limped back to the dormitory. Even though the roommates didn't particularly like her, they couldn't help but show concern. "Leona, what happened to you? You're covered in injuries. Do you need any help?" Leona glared fiercely at everyone in the dorm room. "Save your fake sympathy." She successfully drove everyone away, and no one paid her any more attention. Leona shot me a venomous look. "Nancy, are you happy to see me like this?" I couldn't help but scoff. "You brought this on yourself. How is it my fault? Weren't you the one who came after me first?" As expected. People with issues always blame others for their problems. Seeing that I remained silent, Leona awkwardly muttered, "Don't get too cocky, we'll see how this plays out," then slowly climbed into bed, drew the curtains shut, and cut myself off from the dorm room. The weekend arrived before we knew it. I couldn't wait to get back home. Dad was lounging on the sofa watching TV in the living room. The aroma of my favorite braised pork belly wafted from the kitchen, without a second thought. I hugged Mom tightly. "They're alive, and that's all that mattered." Dad looked at me with concern. Nan, is someone at school bullying you? Tell me everything. I'll make things right for you." Tears welled up in my eyes. In my past life, after Leona framed me and got me expelled, I ran home in tears. Hearing this, Dad was furious and immediately decided to go to the school with Mom to get to the bottom of it. Little did they know. They waited for days without ever getting a chance to meet with the school administration. Later, during the evidence collection process, they vanished. It wasn't until days later that a faint, foul odor began to emanate from a corner of one of the academic buildings. It was then that everyone discovered two long-deceased corpses. For, in an instant, my world came crashing down. If it weren't for me, my parents wouldn't have gone to the school. If they hadn't gone to the school, they wouldn't have died. I can't forgive myself, and I've lost all will to live. A raging fire consumed me completely. Seeing the worry on my parents' faces, I forced a smile and said, "I just missed you both so much. It's been ages since I last saw you." That finally put their minds at ease. "I'll take care of the trash at school myself. This time, I absolutely cannot let my parents get involved again." I reluctantly returned to school after spending 2 whole days glued to my parents' side. Before I left, my parents bought me a bunch of snacks to share with my dorm mates. My roommates happily thanked my parents, except for Leona. She shamelessly reached for it too, but I subtly blocked her without making a scene. Leona's face instantly fell. "Nancy, what do you mean by that? Just pushing your buttons, obviously." I raised an eyebrow, giving the furious Leona a look. "I bought this. I decide who gets to eat it, of course. I'll decide who gets to eat it and who doesn't. Want some? Go buy your own." Leona flushed with anger at my words. "I didn't even do anything to you. Why are you picking on me? What's the big deal? They're just a few lousy bags of snacks." After showing her contempt, she couldn't resist warning the other roommates. "Aren't you afraid Nancy might poison you all?" When one roommate who'd heard enough tried to argue back, I stopped her and said, "If a dog bites you, would you bite it back?" Everyone burst out laughing at my remark. Only Leona flushed bright red and retorted, "So what if Nancy's rich? Just because she bought some junk food doesn't mean you can walk all over people." With that, she ran out of the dorm room. Before long, our resident advisor summoned our entire dorm to the office. She looked at us with a stern expression. "Your parents sent you to school to focus on your studies, not to bully your classmates." Watching Leona standing behind the counselor, a faint smirk tugged at the corner of my lips. Just as I was about to explain things to the counselor, Leona's voice, trembling with feigned tears, cut me off. "Professor, I don't even know what I did to upset Nancy, but she's been turning the whole dorm against me, bullying and freezing me out." She looks down on me for being from out of town and even mocked my accent. She often bribed our roommates with gifts to turn them against me. I know my family isn't as well off as Nancy's, but we live in New China. Shouldn't everyone be equal? Her words trailed off into sobs as she spoke. The counselor frowned deeply, glaring at us with displeasure. You're so young, why are you learning to bully others? Then he looked at me and said, and you, Nancy, I've always thought of you as an outstanding student with both good character and academic excellence. How could you do something like this? I'm truly disappointed in you. Don't even bother participating in this scholarship selection. Take some time to reflect on your actions. When Leona heard the advisor directly revoke my eligibility for the selection, her eyes lit up, and she quickly held back the tears she had been mustering. You should get along well with your classmates. What's the point of always being at odds with each other? You need to properly apologize to Leona right now, and make sure this doesn't happen again. Just as Leona was feeling pleased with her quick thinking, I suddenly burst into tears, acting as if anyone couldn't do it. The moment I started crying, everyone around me was completely stunned, utterly confused about what was happening. Even the advisor flusteredly helped steady me, saying, "It's really not that big of a deal, just apologize to Leona. A mistake corrected is a step toward being a good kid." I grabbed the counselor's sleeve, shaking my head with teary-eyed distress as I choked back sobs. Ms. Lee, I didn't want to bring this up originally. I was afraid of hurting Leona's feelings, but for her to falsely accuse me without even hearing my side, it just breaks my heart. Everyone around stared at me in confusion, and even some free counselors from other departments drifted over. I shot Leona a challenging look and turned up the intensity with Teacher Lee. You're aware of Aunt Judy who falsely accused me in the cafeteria the other day, right? Teacher Lee gave a nod. The smug expression instantly froze on Leona's face. That's Leona's mother, you're lying. Leona snapped without thinking, but I had already prepared evidence. With that, I produced the video I'd recorded earlier. Everyone heard the mother-daughter exchange and saw Leona covered in bruises. Leona tried to snatch it, but I dodged her effortlessly. After reading it, everyone stared at her with strange looks. Leona never talks about her family or her mother in front of others, because she finds it embarrassing. But I'm determined to make sure everyone knows. I completely ignored Leona and continued explaining to Professor Lee. Aunt Judy said Leona put her up to this just to frame me. I was going to let it slide since we're all roommates, but Leona keeps setting me up over and over. I can't take it anymore. I need you to make this right. Professor Lee. No sooner had the words been spoken than Leona lunged forward, only to be swiftly intercepted by her quick-witted roommate. Keep spouting nonsense and I'll rip your mouth to shreds. Another roommate who couldn't stand by any longer jumped into the fray. Leona claims Nancy is leading the bullying campaign against her, all because Nancy didn't share her snacks. Why should she share her own snacks with you? Who do you think you are, Leona, the queen that everyone must cater to? At that moment, everyone finally understood what had really happened. The right and wrong of the situation became crystal clear. The advisor suddenly realized the truth and glared at Leona with anger. I actually thought you were a good kid who got treated unfairly, but you've been playing me for a fool this whole time. Leona, you're way too manipulative, framing your classmates, fabricating baseless accusations. Are you here to study or to play palace intrigue games? I originally thought you were a hard-working student who just barely missed the selection every year, so I even discussed with Nancy about giving this year's opportunity to you. With behavior like this, do you really think you still deserve it? Leona froze mid-struggle, her eyes widening in disbelief as she stared at the counselor. What? The school will also issue you a formal warning. You'd better focus your energy on your studies. Those words slammed shut every possible escape route for Leona. The counselor had indeed consulted me about this matter before, both in my previous life and now. I agreed. The scholarship was Leona's lifeline. Without it, her heartless mother would have sold her off. But now, I wish I could send her straight to hell. Why would I ever let her off easy? Panicking, Leona broke free from the restraints and clung to the counselor's leg. Ms. Lee, I was wrong. It's all my fault. Please don't put this on my record. I'm begging you. Can we just let it slide this once? The advisor just stared at Leona with a furrowed brow. Leona then turned her pleading gaze toward me. Nancy, this is all my fault. I was blinded by jealousy for a moment. Could you please put in a good word for me? I swear I'll never do it again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. without this scholarship, I'm finished, please, you have to help me. Though her words sounded sincere, they weren't heartfelt. I just stared at her coldly without saying another word, but this time, no one came to her aid. Leona slumped to the ground in despair, her gaze shifting from hurt to hatred as she glared fiercely at everyone who ignored her. After that, Leona took an extended leave. 5. She didn't return to school until a week later, her face gaunt and weary. She came directly to me and offered a sincere apology. Nancy, I was wrong before. I shouldn't have tried to ruin your reputation like that. I've realized my mistake. I've done a lot of soul searching during this time, and my parents gave me a stern talking to after they found out. They want to cook you a meal to apologize personally, hoping for your forgiveness. Would you be willing to forgive me, seeing how I've acknowledged my fault and am trying to change? Leona looked at me with sincere eyes. Had I not previously investigated her entire family and known their circumstances, I might have been fooled by her seemingly genuine apology. Without a second thought, I declined. If you're truly remorseful, I'll accept your apology, but there's no need for a meal. With that, I made to leave, realizing she couldn't deceive me. Leona threw herself at my feet right there on the bustling street, clutching my legs as she knelt down. Nancy, please, it's just one meal, won't you say yes? If you refuse to come over for dinner, my parents will beat me to death. I studied Leona with a probing gaze. She kept chattering away. My parents said they'll only believe you've forgiven me if I bring you home for dinner, then I can continue my studies. Saving a life is a greater virtue than building a 7-story pagoda. You can't just stand by and watch me suffer. For the sake of all those years we've roomed together, please help me out. As more and more people gathered on the street, many classmates started speaking up for Leona. She's already humbling herself like this. It's just a meal. What's the big deal? Exactly, she's already apologized. Why are you still acting so high and mighty? Leona looked at me with pleading eyes. Just a meal. Leona raised a hand and swore to the heavens. Just a meal. If I'm lying, may I be struck by lightning. Seeing her like that, I could only give a faint nod, but I saw right through the calculation in her eyes. I initially thought since my parents are still healthy and my life is going smoothly, I'd let her be. After all, she's had her share of hardships too. Everyone has their own path to walk. Unfortunately, Leona just had to go and throw her life away. Soon enough, the day of Leona's dinner party arrived. Leona had been urging me to hurry up and leave a whole hour early. She led me through a maze of twists and turns until we reached a low, single-story house. It seemed this was their temporary home in Jiangcheng. Leona looked at me apologetically and said, "Our place is quite humble. Please don't mind it." I shook my head calmly. Someone inside heard the noise and hurried out to greet me. Leona's mother warmly took my hand and said, "My dear, I'm so happy you could come." Then she led me to sit beside what could barely be called a table. Leona's father was rubbing his hands excitedly, but his eyes kept leering at me with a creepy gaze. The moment I saw him, I was horrified to realize he was the one who had murdered my parents in my past life. I clenched my fists, trying hard to contain my rage. Leona promptly served me a piece of meat. "I heard you like this dish. My mom made it specially for you. Hope you enjoy it." I didn't touch my chopsticks. Leona's mother urged from the side, "Sweetie, do you not like the food I made?" With that, she gave Leona a hard kick. Leona looked at me in pain. "It's all this wretched girl's fault for refusing to mend her ways. That's why she's done so many terrible things before. She knows she was wrong now. Could you find it in your heart to forgive her, for my sake? Here, I made this braised pork belly especially for you." I gave a faint smile and, under everyone's expectant gaze, ate the meal they had so carefully prepared. The moment the meal ended, their true colors showed. Leona's family also revealed their true nature. "You little wretch. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have sunk this low. Since you brought this misery upon us, we'll take it out on you." He was still sitting there with a silly grin on his face when I saw him. Leona dropped the act and reached out to stroke my cheek. "I'll be straight with you. My mom laced the food with a heavy dose of knockout drops. Someone will be here soon to pick you up. Lucky for us, your pretty face fetched a handsome price. You owe me big time. Nancy, the best is yet to come. From now on, you can content yourself with being a breeding machine and organ donor. That's what you get for crossing me." I raised an eyebrow. "How much did you get for it?" 300,000. That's way more than any scholarship. Leona was practically buzzing with excitement. Did you really think I'd walk into this den of wolves completely unprepared? The moment she finished speaking, Leona sensed something was wrong. Why hasn't she passed out yet? Leona's father and mother also snapped to attention, immediately reaching for a wooden plank to knock me unconscious. Unfortunately for them, the police outside had been waiting for this exact moment and stormed in without hesitation. The police swiftly handcuffed Leona, her father, and her mother. Leona was still shouting, "Why are you arresting us? What crime have we committed? I just invited some classmates over for a meal." I walked up to her and calmly removed the hidden camera the police had planted on me, right in front of her. Every word and action of Leona's family members was captured clearly on recording. The evidence is irrefutable and undeniable. Leona kept kicking her legs, trying to break free from the police officer's restraint. "It wasn't me. I had nothing to do with this. My parents forced me into it. I'm a victim too. Please, I'm begging you, don't arrest me. I don't want to go to jail." Unfortunately, this time no one would sympathize with her. Due to the severe negative impact caused by Leona's actions, the school immediately decided to expel her. They also revoked all of Leona's student records. In other words, Leona went from being a prospective college student to having nothing more than a high school diploma. The human trafficking case involving Leona's family soon went to trial. During the proceedings, the police uncovered additional crimes they had committed. They were convicted on multiple charges. Every member of Leona's family was sentenced. That's how Leona ended up in prison. Just before summer break, I got a call from the prison saying Leona wanted to see me. I looked at my graduate school admission letter and agreed. Now we stand separated by just a pane of glass. Leona sprang to her feet the moment she saw me. "Nancy, I've never done you any wrong. Why would you destroy me like this?" I was this close, just one step away, from finally breaking free from that damned Leona family. I had such a bright future ahead of me, endless opportunities. Why did you have to ruin it all? Facing Leona's hysterics, I simply looked at her calmly and said, "Then why did you try to frame me?" Leona avoided my gaze. "If your scheme had succeeded, wouldn't I be the one getting expelled instead?" Leona froze, pressing her palms against the glass as she glared at me with a twisted expression. "What would you know? Someone like you, born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Even if you got fired, it wouldn't ruin you. But without this money, I'm finished. Is it wrong to fight tooth and nail just to survive, to want a better life?" I listened impassively to Leona's self-righteous rant. Sympathy, not an ounce. You want to survive, yet you treat others' lives as worthless. You could have broken free from your cage through your own efforts, but instead you harmed others for selfish gain. That's just the fate you chose. I paid no more attention to Leona's hysterics. Clutching my graduate admission letter tightly, I knew my parents would be overjoyed when they found out. Story 2, my parents cut off my arm and threw me out to attract the attention of the zombie horde in order to save my brother. In just 1 minute, I was gnawed until there was not a single piece of meat left on my body, and even my skeleton was torn apart. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn. I was reborn a week before the zombie outbreak. This time, I resolutely blocked my parents' numbers. After moving out, I grouped up with my best friend to stock up on supplies and reinforced our house. When the zombies broke out, we huddled in the house and became happy people enjoying rice noodles. Across the way, my parents and brother were fighting over a piece of compressed biscuit. My brother, "Give it to me, I'm starving to death." "I'll eat it first." My father punched and grabbed it and swallowed it in 2 bites. I was bitten to death by zombies. The pain of the flesh being torn off brutally is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. After being reborn, I touched my living body and was so excited that tears streamed down my face. "What are you crying for? Isn't it just using your savings to buy a house for your brother? Anyway, you doctors have high salaries. You can just save for a couple more years." I looked up and met my mother's displeased gaze. This scene, these words, I quickly realized that I had been reborn a week before the zombie outbreak. On this day, my mother stole my money to buy a house for my brother. As a result, I had an argument with my mother. Compared to the excitement and dissatisfaction in my previous life, I was much calmer this time. I put down my chopsticks and bowls and said indifferently, "I'll give you my life once as a repayment for more than 20 years of your upbringing. From now on, we're even, you." "What did you say?" My mother was taken aback for a moment, then rolled her eyes at me. It's just spending a little of your money, why are you bringing up life and death? I was too lazy to explain and just got up and walked out. My mother, just like in my previous life, didn't try to stop me, because she was sure that as her daughter, I wouldn't really hold a grudge against her, but that was the old me. After the zombie outbreak in my previous life, in order to exchange for a little food, she threw me to several men to be humiliated at will, and in order to save my brother, she cut off my arm and pushed me out of the villa, making me the target for the zombies to bite. After experiencing all this, I was already completely disappointed in this mother of mine. The cold wind howled. I wiped my face. The end of the world was approaching, and I didn't have much time to immerse myself in grief. Now, there was only one thought in my mind: I don't want such a family anymore. And I want to survive in this apocalypse, too. Having experienced the difficult situation of lacking food and water in the apocalypse, I knew all too well how important supplies were. The first thing to do was stock up on supplies. However, I also faced a huge problem. I had no money. My mother had stolen all my money to buy a house for my brother. Since they were heartless, don't blame me for being injustice. I secretly went back home and stole the bank card that my mother had hidden under the bed. The password was easy to guess, 911227. It was my brother's birthday. My mother stole 100,000 yuan from me to buy a house for my brother, so I transferred 100,000 yuan from her account into mine. As soon as the money arrived in my account, my mother called, "You little wretch, you've got some nerve. How dare you touch the money I saved for your brother's wife? I'm telling you, transfer it back to me right away, otherwise, believe it or not, I'll call the police and accuse you of theft and send you to jail." She was extremely angry, and her voice was deafening. I instinctively held the phone away from my ear. After a while, I said leisurely, "Do as you like. If you dare to call the police, I'll also tell them about you stealing my money. If we go to jail, we'll go together. We won't be alone." It seemed that I had been too weak in daily life. When I suddenly became tough, the person on the other end of the phone was a bit stunned. In an instant, she started cursing, "You good for nothing. How dare you threaten me, you." This time, I didn't pay attention to her and directly hung up the phone. I blocked her number as well. I also blocked my useless father and my mooching brother, all together. Instantly, I felt the world became much quieter. After doing all this, I quickly used my phone to withdraw 30,000 yuan each from Jibei, 60 IOU. And JD, but this money was still far from enough to buy supplies, so I sneaked back home and called my wealthy best friend to come and pay. My best friend, Nora, became an orphan when her parents died in a plane crash during a trip 3 years ago, and she inherited a large fortune. We grew up together since we were little and were the best of friends. Before I was gnawed to pieces by zombies in my previous life, Nora was the only one who rushed out with an axe to save me when she fell beside me. Covered in blood and flesh, she still said to me, "Nina, don't be afraid, sister is here." The past events were vivid in my mind, and it made my eyes sting. "Nina, it's so good to see you alive again." After getting out of the car, Nora suddenly hugged me and choked up. I was stunned. When I looked down and met my best friend's excited gaze, I knew that my best friend had been reborn just like me. We hugged each other tightly, and tears streamed down our faces. In this life, we made a promise to survive together. My best friend and I composed ourselves and immediately went to the wholesale market to stock up on supplies. The goods were sold in large quantities there, and it wouldn't cause unnecessary trouble. Nora was driving, and I began to calculate. In the previous life, when the zombies broke out, there was no water, no electricity, lack of clothes and food, and let alone medicine. In this life, we must stock up on 3 truckloads of mineral water. As for electricity, Nora's villa had already installed solar panels for power generation before, but just in case, we still had to buy 2 generators. To save electricity, I also specially bought 5 large gas cylinders and a gas stove. It would be quite nice to cook some dishes on it. Essential medicines were indispensable, and disinfectant water was even more necessary. Of course, rice, flour, cooking oil, and various seasonings couldn't be lacking either. "Give me 100 boxes of luocefen." Nora glanced at my plan and said faintly, "My best friend and I didn't plan to fight when the zombies broke out. We just wanted to huddle and survive. These appetizing instant snacks were essential. With this in mind, I decisively added rice noodles and Northeast-style old-fashioned spicy hot pot to the list, spicy crayfish, which was a great snack while watching dramas, the lemon boneless chicken feet that my best friend loved, and the Fat House happy water couldn't be missing either. 100 boxes of each of the above. I loved 500 gene of dried sausages and cured meat each, and 100 boxes of vacuum-packed chicken, duck, and fish, 100 boxes of instant noodles in various flavors in buckets, 300 boxes of toilet paper, 100 boxes of sanitary napkins, and 100 boxes of facial cleansing wipes, 50 sets of shampoo, shower gel, toothpaste, and toothbrushes. After arriving at the market, I gave the list to the storekeeper and asked him to prepare the goods according to the list and load them onto the truck. Then my best friend and I went our separate ways. She went to buy vegetables and fruits, while I went to get medicines and weapons. When I came back, my best friend was holding a little pig and directing the workers to load the goods. I turned my head and saw that a truck was already filled with Chinese cabbages, scallions, pumpkins, winter melons, and potatoes, on another truck. Apples, pears, and fruits that were easy to store like pomegranates, longans, and pomelos were also stuffed more than half full. Not only that, there were still a large number of fruit dried in various flavors and canned goods that hadn't been loaded onto the truck. There were also plenty of side dishes that went well with rice, such as spicy cabbage, spicy lotus root slices, lao ganma chili sauce, spicy enoki mushrooms, bibimbap sauce, kelp shreds, and salted duck eggs. I was stunned by the wide variety of these goods. Nora proudly pointed to the truck on the other side and showed off to me, "Sister, this is just the beginning. Look, here's the snack kingdom that I've conquered for you." I saw that a truck was also filled with various snacks like potato chips, marinated duck necks, Oreo cookies, cheese bread, almonds, spiced melon seeds, chocolate, lollipops, and milk tea. I gave her a thumbs up in admiration, but looking at the piglet in her arms, I asked, "What's this for?" "I'm bored staying here and surviving. I'm raising a little pet to pass the time." Nora said it very seriously. I was shocked. "Sister, people can't even feed themselves in the apocalypse, and you still have the mood to raise a pig." 3. I didn't agree to raising a pig at first, but I couldn't stand Nora's nagging. "Nina, a pet pig won't grow big, and when we're bored and dull later, we can treat it like raising a son. Pet pigs are really fun, if you don't believe me. Look it up online." I really took out my phone and searched. I typed in Baidu, "Can a pet pig be made into a roasted suckling pig?" The answer, yes. I glanced at the somewhat fleshy piglet and compromised. Well, it's not a bad idea to raise one. My best friend, who didn't know what I had searched, stroked the pig's head and smiled from ear to ear. "Son, Mom is taking you home." I then silently continued to search on Baidu various common ways to cook pigs. I don't know if it was because of a guilty conscience, but I always felt that the piglet seemed to give me a glare. As for the delivery time, we chose 11 p.m. This way, we could avoid being noticed. After arranging all this, we took a taxi back to the village first. Our village was located in the suburbs of the 5th Ring Road, next to a mountain. There were red leaves on the mountain and mountain spring water, because it was very close to the city. There were many tenants from other places who came to Beijing to seek opportunities. It was really a mixed place. My best friend's house was at the foot of the mountain, a self-built 3-story small villa. We chose this place as our base to huddle and survive. First, her house had solar panels. Second, her house was connected to pipes and could directly get mountain spring water. Third, in our previous life, we also discovered that there was actually an air raid shelter connected to the back of her kitchen. This was very beneficial for us to store things. Even if the zombies came in, we could hide in the air raid shelter and continue to huddle and survive. On the way back, we discussed changing the doors and windows to explosion-proof glass doors. Not only that, but we also hired someone to install a monitoring system and an alarm system. This way, we could observe the outside situation without any blind spots. Once someone touched the wall or courtyard of my house, the alarm bell would ring, and we could enter a combat-ready state at any time. And I planned to turn the 3rd floor into a vegetable garden, plant some vegetables myself, and build a chicken coop to raise chickens and get eggs, even if we were short of supplies later. We could still be self-sufficient for a while with this. When I was carrying the purchased soil materials and various vegetable seeds upstairs at night, my father came to me. He was smoking and looking at me, sighing. "Nina, quickly return the money to your mother and kneel down and apologize to her by the way. Then we can still recognize you as our daughter. Otherwise, if you don't recognize me, that's fine." I raised my hands in agreement. "You can break off the relationship. But you have to pay back the money I spent raising you all these years." My mother in the car got angry, jumped out of the car, and brazenly ransacked the card and several hundred yuan in my bag. I watched her robber-like behavior and was so angry that my head was buzzing, but I didn't step forward to stop her. It wasn't that I was cowardly, it was because I had already known that she would steal my money, and I had already used that 100,000 yuan to stock up on supplies. Now it was just an empty card. If she wanted to take it, she could take it. "You little wretch, I'm waiting for the day when you kneel and beg me to come back home." After taking the card, my mother left without looking back. I didn't plan to tell them about the end of the world. Don't say I'm vicious. What they did to me in my previous life, not taking the opportunity to get revenge on them is already my greatest kindness. In this life, whether they live or die depends on their fate, however. I was also very curious about how my parents would survive this man-eating apocalypse without the way of selling me to exchange for supplies this time, for, as the end of the world was approaching, my best friend and I didn't dare to delay at all. We worked overtime to stock up on supplies. Oh, my best friend also stocked up on pig feed. I then silently took the barbecue seasoning and suckling pig marinating seasoning, thinking that we couldn't waste electricity and gas. I bought charcoal and a stove. We could roast the pigs slowly then. However, before we could replace the glass of the doors and windows of the building, a zombie biting incident occurred in our city. The first video was sent out by someone who ran a breakfast shop in the bustling area of Shiyuan in our village. This morning, two couples came to our shop and got into a fight. The man bit the woman to death. Then a short video was sent along with it. As soon as the video was opened, we saw a guy pounce on his girlfriend and bite off her flesh bite by bite. Goodness, what kind of grudge could there be that he actually bit the girl to death? This guy is so cruel. "Did you call the police, Lao Zhang's son?" The villagers were all discussing it animatedly, but they all thought it was a tragedy caused by a quarrel between young lovers. However, when my best friend and I saw it, our faces suddenly turned pale, because we knew that this wasn't just a murder case. This was the beginning of the apocalypse. 5. In my previous life, my best friend and I were busy at work and didn't pay attention to the messages in the village group, so we didn't know that the zombies had actually quietly started here at this time. Now it wasn't safe to go out, and we could be bitten at any time. The most critical thing was that it was only the third day since we were reborn, although we had stocked up on supplies. The explosion-proof glass doors and windows hadn't been installed yet. The current doors and windows would break with just one smash, and it was very unsafe. What should we do? We haven't replaced the doors and windows yet, having experienced the horror of the apocalypse. My best friend, who was holding the piglet, turned pale. "We've bought too many things these days. There must be neighbors who saw us moving things in and out. After the zombies break out, we will definitely become the primary target to be robbed." I quickly soothed Nora. "Don't panic. I'll contact the manufacturer immediately and pay the express fee. We must have the doors and windows replaced today." After I paid an express fee of 60,000 yuan, the manufacturer finally gave a definite answer that they would come to install our doors and windows tomorrow. After doing all this, my best friend and I set out on the road to stock up on supplies again without stopping. She bought a pigsty and a pig toilet. I silently took a pig-killing knife and hid it aside before she could notice. During the breaks, I also specifically searched on Baidu about how to kill a pig and how to wash pig intestines. By the way, I bought some chili pepper seedlings and planted them in my vegetable garden. Stir-fried chili peppers with pig intestines should be very delicious then. We also bought 2 air purifiers to ensure the clean and odorless air indoors. We also bought a telescope, a drone, and some electric batons, iron balls, strong sulfuric acid, and various slingshots and marbles, etc., for scouting the enemy's situation and for long-distance attacks and defenses. In the evening, the second and third cases of zombie biting incidents were reported one after another. People realized that things were not simple. but they still didn't realize that the end of the world was coming. They thought it was a new type of virus. My best friend and I didn't try to remind everyone that it was the zombies coming. Once we reminded them, our moving things in and out these days and the need to replace the glass would make us stand out, especially after the apocalypse, and it might even bring us a fatal disaster. The most important rule in the apocalypse was, don't be a saint. Saints die the most miserable. Early the next morning, with my best friend and I eagerly anticipating. The explosion-proof glass doors and the installation workers finally arrived. After a whole day, they were finally installed. Not only that, but I also switched on the electric fence around the courtyard wall. Looking at the now impregnable small villa, my best friend and I finally felt a sense of relief. The little pig, seeing that we were happy, also happily spun around. Son, my best friend stroked its pig's head and played with it. I stared at its strong body and all I could think about was, the size of the barbecue grill I bought seems to be about right. It should be enough. After stocking up on supplies for several days, my best friend and I were completely exhausted. At the moment, we were lying on the sofa in a disheveled state, not wanting to sleep at all. Nina, you little wretch, you actually tricked me with an empty card. Get out here right now. Suddenly, my mother's angry pounding on the door came from the monitoring system. I didn't want to pay attention to her and closed my eyes to continue resting. However, my mother's terrified screams came from the computer. Her arrogant roar just now had now turned into a cry filled with fear and sobs. Nina, hurry up and open the door for Mom, quick. Not only did my mother's trembling cries come from the computer, but there were also some moans mixed in. I sensed that something was wrong and walked over to the monitor to check. Under the dim streetlights, a zombie was chasing an ant covered in blood. The ant ran a few steps and was then pounced on by the zombie. A piece of flesh was bitten off her neck, blood gushed out, and immediately the whole person was on the verge of death. The ants who had just been dancing square dance were now fleeing in panic. The zombies had descended upon this village again. 6. Nina, open the door, open the door. My mother's voice came from the computer again. In the monitor, she was already deathly pale from fear, and her hands were desperately pounding on the door. Nina, open the door for Mom quickly. Nina, don't look. Afraid that I would soften my heart, my best friend quickly covered my eyes. Don't worry, I won't make the same mistake again. I turned around and looked at my best friend, my eyes full of determination. Come on, let's go have hot pot. My best friend pulled me towards the kitchen. Since we were tired tonight and didn't want to stir-fry dishes, we chose hot pot, beef tallow hot pot. It was filled with the mutton, tripe, duck blood, and crispy pork strips that my best friend and I loved to eat. After the lid of the pot was opened, the rich aroma of the base sauce wafted out, extremely alluring. Uncle Lee, what's wrong with you? My mother's screams came from outside the door again. My best friend and I instinctively looked downstairs. The uncles and aunts who had been bitten while dancing square dance suddenly got up from the ground. Their strange postures were like marionettes, stiff and terrifying. With the experience of the end of the world in my previous life, I knew very well that they had mutated. My mother had no memories of her previous life. When she saw this scene, she crouched in the corner and wailed, bang, just when I thought my mother would be gnawed to the bone by the zombies. A loud noise suddenly came from downstairs. I took a closer look. I saw my father driving a van crashing into the zombie horde, knocking them away. My mother almost scrambled into the car, then the car roared and rushed out of the zombie horde. Darn it, she actually got away. She's lucky. Looking in the direction where the car fled, Nora gritted her teeth in disappointment. Otherwise, let your son-preferring mother also taste the excruciating pain of having her flesh torn apart by the zombies. When mentioning these things, Nora's palm involuntarily clenched. Nora had been afraid of pain since she was a child. Even if she just scraped her finger a little, she would cry and whine to me for a long time. She was such a delicate person. I couldn't imagine how much courage she had used to rush out and save me in my previous life. With red eyes, I hugged her tightly, and tears fell from my eyes one by one. You fool! You were so afraid of pain. Why did you still come to save me, you? You could have been fine. What silly words are you saying? I promised to look out for you. How could I just watch you being bullied and do nothing? Nora's eyes softened a bit, but my tears were like a dam bursting. In just a few minutes, The village entrance that had just been lively suddenly fell into silence. It was desolate, only a group of zombies were wandering through the streets like lost souls. It's so fast. That dark period has come again, holding the piglet. Nora couldn't help but sigh. Yeah, the days of zombies eating people and people eating people had come again. Only by experiencing it can one know how oppressive, uneasy, desperate, and helpless those days were, and how dark and terrifying that period was. The bloody scene really spoils the appetite. I closed the shutters and put some meat into Nora's bowl. I believe that in this life, we will never make the same mistakes again. Exactly. Nora nodded repeatedly. Sister. We must huddle and survive together, and bring our dear son with us. As she spoke, she looked down at the piglet in her arms with affection. Bring him along. I checked. It is said that husband and wife lung slices are also an excellent dish. Thinking about it this way, I suddenly felt that raising a pig wasn't so bad. Before the internet was cut off, I must download all kinds of cooking methods for pork and pig offal. 7. When the zombies broke out in the village. The group chat in the village went crazy. What's going on here? Did some old man in the village snatch a dance partner and cause a fight? Hey, what kind of eyes do you have upstairs? Does a fight in your family involve biting the neck? This is clearly rabies. How terrible it is to be ignorant. Does rabies make people bite others? Everyone was chatting and discussing. Some people said it was rabies. And some people suspected it was being possessed by evil spirits. Surprisingly, no one thought it was the arrival of the zombies. After all, having grown up in the village, after some discussion, Nora still reminded the villagers, what if it's really the end of the world? I think everyone had better not go out and stock up on more food and drinks just in case. It was originally out of kindness, but unexpectedly, it led to a lot of ridicule. Ha ha ha, the end of the world. You must have watched too many end of the world movies. Exactly, scaremongering. These were still the nicer things to say. Some people even thought that we had bought too many things a few days ago and were trying to sell them to make a fortune. Girl, people's hearts are made of flesh. We're all from the same village, and you have no moral bottom line just to make some money. I think she was probably led astray by that ungrateful Nina, last night, when those ants were biting people. Didn't Nina just stand by and watch her mother's life in danger? Nina is so heartless. Her mother raised her for so long and used a little of her money, and she really holds a grudge. Her family was so scared last night. When they came to their senses this morning, they sent more than a dozen voice messages scolding in the group, and the words were really harsh. Tisk tisk tsk. Birds of a feather flock together. These two rotten pieces of meat are together soon. My best friend and I were inundated with criticism. Nora was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She suddenly threw her phone aside, and it made her piglet squeal. Darn it, these people are just like the dog that bit Lu Dongbin. They can't recognize a kind gesture. Forget it. If they don't listen to the advice, they can just wait to be bitten to death by the zombies. After this incident, my best friend and I never mentioned the zombies again. We just silently continued to huddle and survive. The villagers were quite optimistic at first, but then, as news of zombie biting incidents kept breaking out both at home and abroad, people began to get nervous. A few days later, the military couldn't even be reached. There was a global power outage and water cut off. In our village, there were zombies everywhere on the streets. The food and troops that were supposed to come for support hadn't arrived yet. The villagers began to realize that something was wrong, and everyone stayed indoors waiting for rescue. But the days were really tough. Half a month after the zombie outbreak, many people had run out of their stocked food, and some people began to question the village cadres. Didn't they say that support would come from above? It's been so long, why hasn't it arrived yet? I've eaten the last grain of rice in my house. If it doesn't come soon, I'll have to go and bite the zombies. I've run out of food at home too, and I have a 1-year-old child. When will the food be airdropped? The surviving village cadres could only try their best to soothe people's emotions and said that the reinforcements would come soon, but my best friend and I knew that wasn't the case. The reinforcements wouldn't come so soon. At least, there wouldn't be any support within the next 3 months. The end of the world had broken out globally, and even the military couldn't escape this disaster. It was in complete chaos. Now, waiting for rescue wasn't an option. We could only save ourselves. My best friend and I originally thought that we could just huddle and survive, but unexpectedly, trouble came to us soon. 8. Half a month after the zombie outbreak, many people in the village had run out of food and supplies, including my parents and my brother. They were so hungry that they started eating tree bark. At this time, the communication hadn't been cut off yet. They used my brother's phone to call Nora. Nina, you and Nora went to the supermarket and bought a lot of things some time ago. You must have a lot of stockpiles. Anyway, you can't finish eating them all. Hurry up and send some to me and your father. We're almost starving to death. On the phone, my mother spoke feebly due to hunger, but she still had an ordering tone. As if I owed her by nature, I laughed. Are you dreaming? Not to mention that we don't have food. Even if we did, why should we send it to you? My mother was unhappy when she heard this and shouted, Nina, I'm your mother. When you stole my money from my brother, did you remember that you were my mother? Now that you have no food, you remember that you have a daughter. I thought her self-righteousness was ridiculous. Too lazy to have a verbal fight with her, I directly hung up the phone. I also blocked the numbers of the three of them in my best friend's phone again. I thought that after being rejected by me, they would give up, but I overlooked the darkness of people's hearts in troubled times. In the middle of the night, my best friend and I were suddenly awakened by the ear-piercing siren from the computer. This sound was from the security alarm function, which would only go off when an outsider touched our security net. My best friend and I quickly went to the monitor and, as expected, saw three people sneaking around and climbing over our courtyard wall. When we zoomed in on the monitor, it turned out to be my father, my brother, and my mother. Because the iron net was snagging them, my father and my brother were using tools to try to cut through my iron net. My mother was cursing in a low voice beside them. You little wretch, Nina, you have food but won't give it to us. When we get in, I'll not only take all their food but also give you a good beating after I'm full. You've really gone too far. 9. My best friend and I finally understood this time. This family of three couldn't succeed with soft tactics, so they were going to rob us openly. It seemed that they were really starving. They're incredibly shameless, holding the piglet. Nora was so angry that she wished she could jump out of the monitor and beat those three people to death with a bat. I shook my head. There was no need to be that troublesome. I pressed a button, and the electric fence was immediately electrified. My brother and my father outside immediately twitched violently, and smoke was coming out of their heads. Nora immediately gave me a thumbs up. That's a great move, Charlie. What's wrong with you two? My mother didn't know what was going on and reached out to help my brother. The moment she touched my brother, Nora was quick as a flash and snatched the remote control from my hand. She frantically pressed the button to increase the power. You dare to have ideas about me? I'll electrocute you three pests to death. Zzzzz. There was a piercing sound from the computer, and the three people on the screen twitched so much that their eyes rolled back. When they stopped, their hair was all fluffed up like an explosion, and they all slumped on the roof of our old box truck. Mom, that good-for-nothing Nina actually installed an electric fence. Charlie, who almost became roasted meat, still acted like a spoiled child and nestled into my mother's arms. My mother glared at me hatefully and gritted her teeth. That bitch. It seems she was well prepared. What should we do then? I'm starving to death. I want to eat. Wah. Nina won't answer the phone and won't let us in. Now we can only think of other ways. When we have enough energy, we'll come up with a way to deal with this ungrateful wretch. My mother gave the monitor a vicious look and then sneakily climbed back into the car before the zombies noticed. Seeing their appearance, Nora happily stuffed another steamed bun into the chubby piglet. Ha ha ha, look at their pathetic looks. They still wanted to rob us. Next time they come, we'll make sure they never leave. If they don't cause trouble for us, someone else will surely suffer. Looking at them going to the opposite community, I had a bad feeling. Nora sighed. But we didn't dwell too much on our self-blame. In troubled times, we couldn't care about too many things. We just wanted to protect ourselves. After being disturbed by my mother and the rest of the family, my best friend and I didn't feel like sleeping anymore. This also made me realize that I couldn't turn off the electric fence to save electricity. I immediately turned on the electric fence to be always on. After doing this, I also brought out the slingshot and bow and arrow weapons and placed them beside the bed for easy access in case of a sneak attack. In the apocalypse, it wasn't just zombies eating people, people also ate people. After doing all this, it was already 3 a.m. Nina, come quick. I picked a 3 zero-sized hairy crab for you. It's full of roe. Look, the roe is oozing out. Come and eat it. Nora held the hairy crab and beckoned me over. When it came to eating, it was still my best friend who was good at choosing. The crab she picked was really fat, with a lot of roe, and the meat was sweet, fresh, and firm. We were enjoying our meal. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the opposite community. First, there was the sound of kicking the door, and then there were women's cries. What are you doing? You can't do this. What are you doing? Let me go. 10. My best friend and I both ran to the balcony spontaneously to find out what was going on. We were not far from the opposite building, and we could clearly see what was happening inside, but I'm nearsighted. I could only vaguely see that 3 people had broken into the home of a single girl. At this moment, one person was holding the girl down while the other 2 were rummaging through the cabinets. It seemed that they had found some food, and the 3 of them pounced on it like hungry wolves. I think these 3 people look really familiar. Nora squinted her eyes. They seem to be your mother, your father, and your brother. I was shocked. They really were robbing someone else. I found a telescope and looked over. Opposite, my mother and the other 2 were gathered around the pot, their eyes glowing with greed as they stared at the thick soup in the pot. Perhaps they were too hungry, and my brother even started reaching out to grab the food directly. My mother seemed not to have eaten enough and wanted to take another bite, but my brother pushed her away. I'm not full yet. My mother stumbled and fell to the ground, hitting her head on the corner of the table. And blood gushed out, but my brother and my father were too busy grabbing the food to pay any attention to her. Tisk, how did they get so hungry? Nora clicked her tongue in surprise. I wasn't really surprised. My brother was lazy and gluttonous, and my parents were cowardly and afraid of death. They would never take the risk to buy rice, flour, cooking oil, and other supplies. Moreover, they didn't have a good reputation. They had a feud with Will from the supermarket in the east end of the village, and Will would never sell anything to them. That's why they were left with no choice but to take the risk of going out to rob others for food. Once they set the example, other people in the village who were out of food also started to search for food everywhere, just like in my previous life. The village once again descended into a hell even more terrifying than the presence of zombies, often in the middle of the night. There would be sounds of smashing and breaking. Many men even took advantage of the chaos to have evil intentions towards girls. No, don't touch me, I'll give you all my food, please let me go. Okay. While I was lost in thought, cries came from the balcony of the floor where Charlie was robbing someone. Please, I want the food, and I want you too. On this day, after Charlie had eaten his fill, he started to be lustful. He dragged the girl to the balcony and his hands began to restlessly tear at the girl's clothes. Damn it, your brother is just as much of a scumbag as he was in the previous life. Looking at the girl being bullied across the way, Nora was so angry that she was shaking. She was completely agitated and grabbed a baseball bat and threw it at Charlie across the way. You bastard. In my previous life, my brother had also brutally forced himself on Nora like this. I had once tried to protect Nora, but my parents held me down on the ground and beat me until my head was bleeding and I passed out. Precisely because we had experienced such darkness, we couldn't bear to see any girl go through the same hell that we had endured. Nora's eyes were burning red, like a madwoman. She grabbed a water cup from the table and threw it over, but this commotion only made Charlie more excited. He deliberately dragged the girl towards our side, provocatively stuck up his middle finger, and then was about to reach out and tear the girl's clothes. Damn it. Before Nora could finish her sentence, I had already found a weapon. I drew the bow and set the arrow, all in one smooth motion. The next second, the arrow pierced Charlie's shoulder with a swish. The person in question howled in pain. Nina, you bitch. Nora was stunned for a moment and then gave me a thumbs up. Sister, that's awesome. 11. Nina, you little slut. How dare you shoot me with an arrow? Just you wait. If I don't kill you, I'm a bastard. Charlie looked at his bleeding arm and angrily cursed at us. That mouth, it stank so much. Without hesitation, I raised my hand and shot another arrow at that scoundrel. This arrow directly pierced through Charlie's crotch. His face turned deathly pale with fright, and he immediately shut his mouth. I was about to shoot him another arrow and send him to his doom. Seeing that the situation was bad, Charlie scrambled and crawled into the bedroom. Just as my best friend and I were disappointed that we hadn't managed to kill that bastard Charlie, suddenly a group of people burst in. Boss, There's food here, and there's also a woman, hee hee. One of the men looked at the thick soup on the table and my mother, and sneered. Hearing this familiar voice, my best friend and I exchanged a look and knew the answer in our hearts. This was Hunter and his gang, in my previous life. After the zombie outbreak, the gang of hooligans, relying on their tall and strong stature and their ability to modify weapons, started to do all kinds of evil deeds. At first, they just robbed for food in the neighboring village, and later they came to our village. They would rob whatever they saw, and if anyone resisted, they would kill them. This was going to be interesting. That bastard Charlie had run into someone tough. I wanted to see how he would manage to survive. What are you doing? This is my stuff. Charlie, who had no memories of his previous life, pounced forward trying to protect his thick soup, but was kicked flying by one of Hunter's men. That kick was very hard. Charlie flew 2 meters away and spat out blood when he landed on the ground, but even so, Hunter's gang still showed no mercy and surrounded him and started punching and kicking him. Charlie howled in pain. Don't hit my son, don't hit my son. My mother almost cried as she pounced forward and shielded Charlie under her body. I'll give you the food, just take it, that's more like it. Upon hearing this, the group of people stopped. After they ransacked all the food and drinks, Charlie dared to look up. He was black and blue all over, and one of his teeth was missing. A 30-year-old man was hugging my mother and wailing. As expected, only the wicked can be punished by the more wicked. Nora laughed until tears came out. Although I felt satisfied seeing Charlie in such a sorry state, I couldn't really laugh. It wasn't because I still had any familial feelings for him, it was because of Hunter and his gang of bastards. In my previous life, ever since they came to our village had fallen into an even deeper hell. At first, they just robbed for food. Later, these people got bolder. They robbed the supermarket in the east end of the village and deliberately jacked up the prices. A piece of bread cost 2,000 yuan, a bottle of water cost 1,500 yuan. On the 60th day after the zombie outbreak, when their supplies were also running out, these beasts started to go from house to house, burning, killing, and robbing for food, and even capturing some women for their own pleasure. These people were more terrifying than the zombies. 12. After Hunter and his gang left, the girl on the balcony also took the opportunity to run to another floor. After this incident, Charlie became much more obedient. He didn't dare to move for several days. Because of the kick from Hunter's gang, his lumbar vertebra was fractured and he couldn't move. Although Charlie was subdued, the village didn't become peaceful because of that. Instead, because of Hunter and his group, the village was completely plunged into a dire situation. They monopolized the supermarket and the pharmacy and jacked up the prices. There were complaints everywhere. Too many people in the village were out of water and food and started eating tree bark. One day, a message suddenly popped up in the village group chat. Does anyone have any antipyretics? My child has a high fever and won't come down. Hunter and his gang are asking us for 10,000 yuan for one pill. We've already given them the money, but they won't give us the medicine. They even told us that one less person means one less person competing for food. Please, everyone. Does anyone have any medicine to spare? Can you lend me some? The message was sent by a young couple next door to my house. They had just given birth to a child and came back to the village to recuperate after childbirth, and they were trapped here. But no matter what they said, no one in the group chat replied. Half of the reason was that many people had died, and the other half was that no one would reveal their stockpiled supplies, for fear of being robbed by Hunter and his gang. Please, I'm begging you, save my child. Seeing that no one replied, the child's mother almost sobbed as she sent a voice message. But no matter how much she pleaded, there was still no response. My best friend and I also didn't dare to reply. We definitely couldn't be the one to stand out at this time. But my best friend and I weren't heartless people who would turn a blind eye to someone in need. After all, we were all neighbors. The guy next door had once taught Charlie a lesson for me when he saw Charlie bullying me. Putting down the phone, I used a drone to send over some antipyretics, cold medicine, and anti-inflammatory drugs. Thank you. When he received the medicine, the guy next door had red eyes. Then he took out 2 duck eggs from his pocket, put them in a bag, and hung them on the drone to send them back to me. Looking at the 2 duck eggs, my best friend and I were deeply touched. In these chaotic times when food was so scarce, they had given us 2 duck eggs. It seemed that not everyone was bad. My best friend and I never spoke in the group chat, but whenever we saw someone asking for help, we would still choose to use the drone to send them the things they needed. However, we didn't dare to send them during the day. We always chose to do it at around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, otherwise, if we were discovered by Hunter and his gang, my best friend and I would become the target of public criticism. In the following days, my best friend and I became more and more cautious. We didn't even dare to extract the cooking fumes when cooking. In times of famine, even the slightest aroma could attract others' attention. When we ate barbecued meat, we closed the windows tightly. We even had to eat hot pot in the air raid shelter, eating lucifen. This had become the only thing we dared to eat openly. 13. During these days, my best friend and I didn't starve to the point of eating dirt like in my previous life. Instead, we gained a little weight, about 1 or 2 pounds. The piglet was even more exaggerated. In just over a month, it kept growing bigger and bigger. Nina, our son, has been fed so well by me. Nora stroked the pig's head with a proud look on her face. It is really good. Keep it up. Try to fatten it up more. It's still a bit thin now. If we slaughtered it now, it wouldn't last us many meals. Thinking of this, I silently took out my pig-killing knife and found a stone to secretly sharpen it. We couldn't wait until we needed it to start sharpening the knife. Bang! Suddenly, a loud noise rang out in the silent village. My best friend and I suddenly looked up. We saw that Hunter and his gang were driving a modified car and crushed a group of zombies to death. Because of this crazy move, the other zombies didn't dare to act rashly. Hunter climbed onto the roof of the car and shouted into the village with a megaphone, "Those who are still alive, hand over your food voluntarily, and I'll be kind enough to give you a little, but if my brothers find out that you've been hoarding food, don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, Hunter's face darkened, and he swept his gaze wildly through the air, showing his power. Then Hunter said again, "Of course. If anyone is willing to join us and report which households have stockpiled food, we'll split the looted items equally." Hunter really knew how to manipulate people's minds. He had mastered the art of coercion and inducement. At this moment, people were so desperate with hunger that they might very well join him and collaborate with evil for the sake of survival. The first one to jump out was my brother, Charlie. I want to join you." 14. When Charlie, who was so hungry that he was nothing but skin and bones, ran out, he could barely stand. "As long as you give me something to eat, I'll tell you which households have stockpiled supplies and how many households are still alive. I can even call my mother out for you guys to have fun with." "Charlie, are you even human?" My mother heard this and slapped her thigh and cursed angrily upstairs, but Charlie turned a deaf ear. He staggered like a dog and crawled at Hunter's feet. "Boss, give me a piece of biscuit. Once I have the strength after eating it, I'll immediately take you to loot things. I know of a household, they definitely have a lot of supplies stored. They haven't asked for help in the village these days, and I've also heard that when someone asks for help in the village these days, someone will secretly send things over at night. It shows how abundant their food supplies are. Let's rush over and take the things away later. And there are women in there, fresh and pretty. My brothers will definitely like them." Hearing this, my best friend and I couldn't wait to strangle Charlie to death. It was obvious that he was talking about us. That damned scumbag. We shouldn't have spared his life that night. Now, for a piece of food, he's become a dog for others and is causing trouble for us and the villagers. Nora was so angry that her hands clenched tightly, and she wanted to beat this inhuman thing to death. I also regretted it. Why hadn't I been quicker that night and shot an arrow through that scoundrel's heart? I've run out of biscuits. Now, tell me, which household in the village has the most stockpiled food? While my best friend and I were lost in thought, Hunter's sinister laugh came from outside. Charlie licked the crumbs of the biscuit on his fingers and turned his head to look in our direction. My best friend and I instinctively gripped the bows and arrows in our hands tightly. "They are." Just as Charlie was about to point in our direction, I shot an arrow over. It's better to strike first than to be at the mercy of others. Bang! The leader, Hunter, fell off the armored vehicle. Hunter covered his chest, his face turning pale, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead, and he was in great pain. Boss. When Hunter's subordinates saw this, they rushed forward to support him, and some people took out guns and fired back at us. Bullets shot towards my best friend and me. My best friend and I were so scared that our hearts were pounding wildly. Fortunately, they were all firmly blocked outside by the bulletproof glass windows. They actually installed bulletproof glass. We can't hit them at all, now we can only ram the door. There was another commotion downstairs. My best friend and I quickly came to our senses and immediately used a drone to spray strong sulfuric acid and a large amount of alcohol at them. Although this group of people shot down the drone, the sulfuric acid splashed on their skin, burning their eyes and hands. A group of men howled in pain, and I controlled another drone and dropped an open flame. Boom! Suddenly, this group of men were engulfed in a sea of fire, and cries of pain filled the air. My best friend and I were about to follow up on our victory, but suddenly several remaining men in the village rushed out. Brothers, we can't let these people bully these two girls. 15. My best friend and I were very surprised that the villagers came out to help. While we were still in a daze, the wife of the guy next door waved her hand to signal us to relax. You helped us, we won't let you get into danger. My best friend and I then realized that the group of people who rushed out were all those we had helped before. Looking at the kitchen knives and shovels in their hands, it seemed that they had been prepared for a long time. As soon as these desperate people dared to break down our door, they would rush over and fight them to the death. In this apocalypse, feeling such warmth, my best friend and I suddenly felt a warmth in our hearts. Soon, the villagers beat Hunter and his gang black and blue. Cries of pain came one after another in the village. Charlie was also among those being beaten. The one who beat him the hardest was my mother. She slapped his mouth one after another. You ungrateful wretch. You don't deserve to be a human being. You sold your mother for a piece of biscuit. Mom, uncles, stop hitting me. I was wrong. Charlie's words were slurred because of the pain. Even Hunter, who had been tyrannical for a month, couldn't help but kneel down and beg for mercy. Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me. I was wrong. I'll never dare again. But people sneered at him. Beast, you deserve this day. Humph. When you were robbing food and harassing the women in the village. Why didn't you say you were wrong? Hunter and his gang had committed heinous crimes, and the villagers hated them to the core. People wished they could each give them a kick and beat them to death. But after all, everyone was a simple farmer, and no one had the heart to do it. After taking away their guns, gunpowder, and food, they ignored this group of people, without the things to intimidate others. This group of people didn't dare to stay in the village anymore and drove out of the village. After driving away these evil people, the villagers also heaved a sigh of relief. My best friend and I also heaved a sigh of relief. 16. Charlie completely broke off with my mother. My mother no longer shared the food she found with Charlie. She would also often stand across the way and look in our direction. Sometimes she even tried to please me by offering an egg, but I ignored her every time. On the 99th day of the apocalypse, there came some good news. The communication was restored. The news reported that scientists had found out the cause of the zombie outbreak. It turned out that a dog carrying the virus in a laboratory had run out. This dog bit someone, and that person was infected with the virus and turned into a zombie. Now the country was developing an antidote. Not only that, soon our village received official airdrop supplies. These included water, food, and medicine. The villagers were extremely excited when they saw these supplies. The young man and woman next door were even more tearful with joy. My best friend, Nora, and I were also crying our eyes out. On the 100th day of the apocalypse, we finally ushered in the light. 1 year after the apocalypse, this scene, these words, I returned to the hospital to continue working, while Nora opened a pet store. Her eldest son, well, we successfully ate it. Because the pig just kept growing bigger and bigger, we realized that we had been deceived. This wasn't a pet pig at all. It was a domestic pig. In the end, it reached 200 gene. Our home simply couldn't accommodate it anymore, so Nora reluctantly sent it to the grill. My brother was disliked by the villagers because he had betrayed them. He left and never came back. As for my father and mother, they would buy a cake for me every year on my birthday, but I always refused to accept it. Some things, once they're broken, are broken. They can't be pieced back together. Story 2. My name is Isla, and I'm an ordinary person. But I have 3 extremely powerful and remarkable friends. I was torn apart by zombies in my previous life, and then I was reborn. after being reborn a week before the start of the apocalypse, I sprang up from the bed in one leap and immediately called my friends to urgently stock up on supplies to defend against the zombies. However, I found that they were also reborn. Wasn't this rebirth cheat only given to me? 1. I died in the 3rd year of the zombie outbreak during the apocalypse. The zombie king breached the base in the city where I was. The sounds of wailing were unceasing. I didn't awaken any superpowers and was overwhelmed by the zombie horde along with other ordinary people. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the soft small bed in the staff apartment of the Chemical Research Institute. I sat up gasping for air, my hair damp with sweat and sticking to my forehead. My mind was still immersed in extreme panic and pain. I looked at my intact and smooth skin in a state of shock. If my body wasn't still convulsing from the intense pain of being bitten by zombies, I might have thought I had just had a nightmare. The TV at the end of the bed was broadcasting the news. Today, the city's Prevention and Control Center has discovered a case of high-risk rabies. Please pay attention. Citizens, I couldn't listen to the rest of the words. I frantically fished out my phone from under the pillow and started looking through the contact list. I knew it wasn't rabies. On August 31st, 2023, the first case of the zombie virus appeared in Jiang City. I was reborn a week before the apocalypse. It was already 12 o'clock at night, and I was frantically dialing my friends' numbers. I made over 100 calls in a row. But all I heard on the other end of the phone was a cold robotic female voice. Hello, the number you have dialed is currently in use. Please try again later. As an orphan who grew up in an orphanage, I didn't have much to care about in this world, except for my 3 friends. We were all children from the orphanage, and the 4 of us grew up supporting each other. We were not only friends but also family. After graduating from university, we each found our own careers in different fields. Although we were in the same city, we lived in different parts of it due to work. Nevertheless, we still maintained the habit of gathering once a month. Until the zombie outbreak later, we never saw each other again. In my previous life, I offered various rewards to ask people to inquire about their whereabouts, but I got nothing in return. The search team member who took on my commission patted me on the shoulder and said, "Look on the bright side, in this world. They either have already died in the mouth of some zombie, or they are still struggling to survive in some base like us." I firmly believe that bad guys always live long. These guys must all still be alive. When I was overwhelmed by the zombie horde, the last thought that flashed through my mind was, fortunately, the 3 of them weren't in this base. Damn, it really hurts when zombies bite. I'm leaving first. Let's be friends again in the next life. In the blink of an eye. I was reborn before the apocalypse. This time, in this new life, we all have to live well and see the spring flowers bloom together again. 2. Since I couldn't get through on the phone, I got up and was about to go out to intercept them when I suddenly remembered that we also had a QQ group chat. After 3 years in the apocalypse, I almost forgot how to use modern technology. I smiled bitterly and opened the chat app. Instantly, my phone froze due to the overwhelming 999 plus messages. The unread messages jumped to the first one, and the content on the first page of the group chat was quite astonishing. Evelyn, the end of the world is coming. I've rented the address of the mountain villa. Come quickly. Connor, what a coincidence. You were reborn too. Victor, necessities list for the apocalypse. Doc, give Isla a call and let's go pick her up. Is this a wholesale rebirth? The amount of information was a bit overwhelming, and I stared at the group chat in a daze. Watching them quickly finalize the reinforcement and renovation of the villa, the quantity of food to be purchased, the meeting place, and the procurement plan for the next day, the last message stopped 2 minutes ago. At Isla, why can't we get through to your phone? We're downstairs at your place. Come down quickly. I even forgot to change my clothes. I jumped up from the bed in a hurry and ran downstairs in my slippers. My slippers fell off twice on the way, pushing open the unit door. A Jeep Wrangler was parked downstairs, the car door was open, and the 3 guys were leaning against the car smoking, looking at their familiar faces that I hadn't seen for 3 years. My eyes welled up with tears, and I burst into tears. I rushed forward with snot and tears and threw myself into Evelyn's arms. Evelyn used to always laugh at me for being a crybaby, but this time she didn't make fun of me. She stroked my head and hugged me tightly. The faint smell of her lady's cigarette was very pleasant. It's cold at night. Why didn't you put on more clothes before coming down? When she said this, she was only wearing a thin shirt. For someone like her who always pays attention to her appearance and whose three-piece suit seems to be tattooed on her body no matter what the occasion, this was a bit strange. I missed you guys so much. I searched for you for a long time during the apocalypse but couldn't find you. I choked out the words intermittently. A large coat was draped over me. I turned around, and Connor was standing there lazily with half a cigarette in his mouth. Little crybaby, what are you looking at me for? I'm not cold. Get in the car first. Victor crushed the cigarette but with his shoe. His voice was calm and reassuring. It's not safe outside. We can talk about things in the car. 3. We exchanged information in the car. They woke up a few hours earlier than me, and with money. A lot can be done in those few hours. The 1,000 square meter villa comes with a basement. People will come to install bulletproof glass and a high-voltage power grid tomorrow. Evelyn's words were very much in line with her status as a boss lady. Victor was driving in the front and said slowly, I've already asked an acquaintance to buy the commonly used medicines and medical equipment. They will be delivered to the villa the day after tomorrow. As a researcher at the Virus Prevention and Control Research Institute, he still has some connections. I really couldn't buy a gun. Just now, I bought a bundle of machetes. The shop owner almost called the police and had me arrested. Connor crossed his legs and then became cocky again as he spoke. I also bought a batch of labor protection uniforms, stun guns, and batons in the name of borrowing them for an artist's bodyguards. And there's also a generator. Wait a minute. Where did you get the money? I suddenly looked up in confusion while listening and stared at Connor suspiciously. This guy has always been a moonlighter who believes in living in the moment. Although he's a rising star, he spends money lavishly and has no savings at all. Controlled items are not cheap. I bet Connor won't be able to afford this money by the end of the month. I took out a 10 million yuan nude loan. If the apocalypse doesn't come, I'll be ruined and have to rely on you guys to support me for the rest of my life. Connor whistled leisurely. I looked at Connor in shock and was speechless. Evelyn suggested that he could go and perform stripteases at that time to earn a living. However, the lack of a gun is indeed a very troublesome thing. After all, in the apocalypse, it's not just zombies that we need to defend against. I thought for a while, logged onto an anonymous forum, and bought some things, planning to make some self-defense gadgets myself. For, the car drove along the mountain road and stopped in front of a luxurious villa on the mountaintop. The villa came with a fence and a small garden. I stood on the balcony and looked out at the lights of the entire city, feeling a myriad of emotions. Evelyn chose this place because of its wide view, its distance from the urban area, and its defensibility. I didn't sleep all night. In the morning, we sat around the table having breakfast. I ate very preciously. After the apocalypse, the unified distribution was either compressed biscuits or nutritional paste. I hadn't had a proper meal like this for a long time. Evelyn snatched the last piece of soy sauce spare ribs from under Connor's chopsticks and put it into my bowl. I buried my head in my food and happily ate the big piece of meat. Today's breakfast was cooked by Victor. His cooking skills are top-notch, especially compared to the lazy Connor and Evelyn, and me who can only make tomato and egg with instant noodles. The male housekeeper is truly the best. Just like in the previous life, my supervisor was transferred to the city's prevention and control center a month later. Yesterday, I lost contact with him. The last message he sent me was, "Don't go out." After everyone had almost finished eating, Victor put down his chopsticks after he was full. There was a dead silence in the air. I had met his supervisor, a very cheerful little old man. We all knew that the epidemic first broke out at the city's prevention and control center, but in the previous life, the time when he sent me this message, Victor glanced at the different expressions on everyone's faces, paused, and then continued, was 3 days later. I felt as if there was a heavy weight in my stomach, and something was getting out of control. I heard my own dry voice. That means the virus is spreading faster this time around. Maybe we don't have a week's worth of preparation time this time. Victor pursed his lips and summarized. After the topic during breakfast, everyone was in a bad mood. In the morning, the security team came to install the high-voltage power grid and bulletproof glass. No way, this job definitely can't be done in a day. The person in charge shook his head frantically as he looked at the 40m*30m fence of the villa. The person in charge estimated the workload and emphasized, "It will take at least 10 days, Evelyn." 1 day, the person in charge said, You see, the explosion-proof door also needs to be replaced. We really can't manage it." Evelyn silently pressed a long string of numbers on the calculator. The person in charge's tone suddenly changed, and his face beamed even more brightly than a chrysanthemum. "We'll finish it even if we can't manage it, as long as the customer needs it. There's nothing we can't do." In the end, the boss lady Evelyn supervised the work at home, and I went out to do the shopping with Victor and Connor. 5. We deliberately waited until the security and renovation workers left before driving the trucks full of goods back. There were 3 full trucks. People who knew would know that we were stockpiling supplies. And those who didn't know might think we were going to open a supermarket in the mountains. While unloading the goods, Connor complained. That old man who sold canned food hadn't sold so many canned goods in ages. He looked at us like we were big fools, especially rich big fools. Victor silently added 2 more boxes of huge and heavy canned goods to Connor's hands and was satisfied to hear a muffled groan, after which the world became quiet. "Excuse me for asking this." After unloading 3 large sacks of potatoes, Evelyn looked at the 3 more sacks still in the truck and narrowed her eyes dangerously. "Isla, why did you buy so many potatoes?" Potatoes are a high-yield staple food. If they sprout, they can be planted. They can be stored in the refrigerator or freezer. The resistant starch in refrigerated potatoes is good for blood sugar, and they can be used to make French fries, stewed potatoes, stir-fried potato shreds with potato chunks. My voice gradually became quieter. "Why else, of course. She's afraid she won't be able to eat French fries in the future." Connor, passing by with 2 boxes of ketchup, sneered. "She almost cleared out all the potatoes in the vegetable market. You still have the nerve to talk about me." I immediately shouted and exposed him. "You said how could we eat French fries without ketchup, and you even added 2 extra boxes out of personal preference. All right, then you two will be responsible for peeling, cutting, and packaging these 6 large sacks of potatoes into pieces and freezing them later." Evelyn made the decision. "No, boss." Connor and I quickly knelt down and clung to Evelyn's legs, crying bitterly. Sure enough, shopping is fun for a moment, but unloading and organizing is like a cremation ground. The 4 of us spent half the night moving all the various fresh and frozen meats, rice, noodles, canned goods, plant seeds, household appliances, etc., from the trucks into the house. We only stocked up on drinking water for a month, but we bought a lot of disinfectants and water purifiers. The virus is afraid of high temperatures, and rainwater can be consumed after being disinfected, filtered, and distilled at a high temperature. Afterwards, the 4 of us lay on the sofa in various postures, looking like we were dead, and no one wanted to talk. "There's still so much work to do tomorrow." Ding! At this moment, our phones simultaneously received a text message notification, pushing out a new message dash. "Dear citizens of Jiang City, due to the sudden and complex situation of the current new rabies virus epidemic and the shortage of medical resources in the city, our city is now optimizing the epidemic prevention and control measures, lifting the temporary control, and shifting to individual self-protection. Please reduce unnecessary outings." The 4 of us looked at each other simultaneously. The medical emergency prevention and control system in Jiang City had completely collapsed. We didn't have much time left. 6. Early in the morning, while Evelyn and the others were still asleep, I tiptoed and quietly opened the door. Express delivery. The person sent by the anonymous forum to deliver the goods was a surly man wearing a black hat and a mask, so I couldn't see his face clearly. There was a long scar on his brow, and that scar looked somewhat familiar. When signing for the goods, I was sharp-eyed enough to see the dark purple patterns on his neck when he lowered his head. When I met his bloodshot eyes, I retracted the silent crossbow in my arms. It wasn't out of compassion. I knew that any guy on this anonymous forum deserved to die 100 times over. He was infected. I looked at this guy with pity. Since he was a dying man, there was no need for me to silence him. I carefully found a relatively safe place to put the things away properly. In my heart, I actually hoped that I would never have to use them. However, it's better to be prepared for any eventuality. I clapped my hands and then tiptoed back to my room to catch up on some sleep. In the morning, as the only 2 science students in the family, Victor and I joined hands to lay a thick layer of the most efficient photovoltaic power generation panels currently available on the roof, the balcony, and the outer walls of the house. This could achieve about 70 to 80% of the power supply for the entire building. We also left quite a few photovoltaic panels, planning to cover the whole mountain with them later, coupled with a diesel generator. It should be almost enough. Connor and Evelyn were bossed around by us and moved the battery panels around. Victor and I were responsible for installing and connecting the circuits. I'm a chemical engineer. Although it's not exactly my area of expertise, I have experience in installing photovoltaic power generation. In my previous life, photovoltaic power supply accounted for 80% of the total power supply in the base of Jiang City. I took odd jobs when laying the power generation panels. The huge heat generated by the refraction of thousands of photovoltaic panels could instantly incinerate hundreds of zombies. If it weren't for the traders, Jiang City might not have been breached so quickly. I lowered my eyes, hiding the emotions in my eyes. Not far away, Brother Victor called me over to take a look at the circuit. Isla, come here for a moment. Coming, I raised my head with a bright smile and trotted over. 7. With the support of money and knowledge, in just 4 days, our doomsday safe house was already taking shape. Now, the villa, or perhaps it should be called a steel fortress. The outer walls were all reinforced with 2-centimeter thick high-strength steel plates. And the windows were all replaced with professional bulletproof glass. It even thoughtfully added a one-way privacy film. The fence outside the house was reinforced with double-layer steel bars and built 3 meters high. There was a dense circle of high-voltage power grids, and there were even 36 monitors installed, not to mention zombies. Not even a mosquito could get in. The villa has 3 floors, plus the basement, making it a total of 4 floors. The first floor is where we eat and live. In order to maintain a positive and healthy psychological state in the apocalypse, we didn't make too many modifications. We just added a home theater and KTV room for entertainment. The walls on the second floor, except for the load-bearing walls, were all knocked down and divided into 3 areas. Area A was piled high with vacuum-sealed food such as canned goods and compressed biscuits. Area B housed various hardware tools like high-intensity flashlights, shovels, chainsaws, hammers, drones, and some small household appliances. Area C was used to store daily necessities such as clothes, shoes and socks, sanitary napkins, and quilts. The third floor was reserved for Victor and me as an operating room and a laboratory. We also specially built a low-temperature storage room to store some special medications. In the basement, a gradient cold storage room was set up. Fresh and frozen meats, frozen foods, rice, noodles, fruits and vegetables, and plant seeds were stored in different temperature zones according to their storage requirements. In each room on every floor, walkie-talkies, machetes, flashlights, and stun guns were placed, just in case of an emergency. Except for the rooms where we lived, high-definition military cameras were installed everywhere, leaving no blind spots in the surveillance. Once the preparations were almost done, the 4 of us would just lounge on the big sofa in the living room on the first floor, enjoying the last moments of comfort before the apocalypse. 8. The previously ordered supplies such as medicines were gradually delivered one after another. We also went down the mountain to do some shopping from time to time, although most of the supplies could be ordered separately via phone and the internet and delivered to the foot of the mountain. There were still some things that had to be bought in person. For example, our future source of protein. We didn't choose to raise poultry like chickens and ducks. Although poultry can lay eggs, their crowing and noise might attract zombies. Moreover, if the breeding hygiene was not properly handled, it could easily lead to plagues. Modern poultry farms would regularly inject and administer a large amount of antibiotics to the poultry they raised to prevent diseases. However, after the apocalypse, any kind of medicine would be as precious as gold, and it would be really uneconomical to use it to feed chickens and ducks, so we chose to raise rabbits. We're buying 24 pairs, give us a better price, we'll come back to your place next time. Next life, I held a rabbit in my hand and bargained with the auntie, spitting everywhere as we talked. The 3 cold bodyguards, standing quietly behind me, suddenly moved and grabbed my hand at the same time. What? I was so startled that I almost dropped the rabbit onto the auntie's face opposite me. Not far away, a middle-aged uncle, who was walking, suddenly bent over and coughed loudly. Then he fell to the ground with a thud and couldn't get up. His body was still twitching and convulsing. The people around him screamed and scattered, and someone called 120. I clearly saw that there was a patch of black blood foam left on the ground where the uncle had just been standing. We looked at each other and stopped bargaining. We threw down the money, picked up the rabbits, got in the car, and quickly fled the vegetable market. The first batch of zombies had appeared. 9. After we got home, we tacitly didn't talk about what happened in the vegetable market. We also stopped going out and just silently strengthened the daily patrols and reinforced the defenses of the safe house, waiting for the sword of Damocles hanging over Jiang City to fall. The precious and expensive flowers and plants that were originally planted in the yard, which clearly looked very valuable, were all pulled out by me and replaced with cherry tomatoes and green peppers to supplement vitamins. Now, we had also cleared a piece of land next to the vegetable garden to raise rabbits. The reason we chose rabbits instead of other animals was precisely because of the amazing reproductive ability of this species, without food pressure. A female rabbit could give birth to more than 500 rabbits in a year. It was simply the best source of renewable protein. Besides, rabbits are so cute. Why don't we brush some honey on it? I rushed to the front excitedly, holding a bowl. Victor was grilling rabbits for us in the yard. The rabbit meat was fragrant and crispy on the outside, with the fat oozing out under the smoke of the charcoal fire. Finally, he sprinkled some cumin and chili salt on it. Gulu, the three moochers next to me swallowed their saliva. Okay, Victor's words were suddenly drowned out by a deafening loud bang, boom rumble rumble. It was coming from the direction of the urban area. We knew something was wrong and quickly took out our phones and opened the Dojia live broadcast room in the same city. The rumbling sound in our ears lasted for dozens of seconds and still didn't stop. In the live broadcast room, 10, all we could see was a sea of red. An airplane dived down and diagonally cut the tallest financial building in Jiang City into two halves from top to bottom. In the towering mushroom cloud, pieces of flesh and limbs, along with shards of glass, rained down like rain, the reflection of mirrors and blood intertwined, presenting a cruel and bloody beauty. The shockwave from the airplane explosion instantly blew up the cars driving on the surrounding streets. Dozens of cars tumbled dozens of meters away and crashed heavily to the ground, bursting into flames in a series of explosions. A car was flipped over to the side by the heat wave, and thick black smoke billowed out of the car. The people inside screamed and opened the car window, struggling to climb out. However, they didn't expect that they were just entering another hell. The people on the street who had turned into zombies went crazy under the stimulation of sound, light, and heat. Roaring and pouncing on the living people who were fleeing in panic, screams pierced the sky. The man who was trying to escape through the car window was surrounded by the rushing zombies, who bit and gnawed at him. Only half of his body was left stuck in the car window, dripping blood downwards. The zombies frantically crashed into the still-locked car door. The driver inside, terrified, stepped on the gas pedal and rushed out, crashing into the lady who was running away in front. Bright red blood mixed with white brain matter spattered onto the car window. After a while, the lady who had been knocked down to the ground dragged out her intestines and got up again. She stumbled and pounced on the nearby bloody prey that had been bitten beyond recognition. It was the end of the world on Earth. It was supposed to be the day after tomorrow. I watched this scene of purgatory on Earth in silence, and my hands and feet instantly turned cold. Even though I had already deduced that the apocalypse was accelerating in this life, I never expected that this disaster would come so quickly and be so tragic. Humans seemed so small in the face of it. The encrypted message that was supposed to remind the future leader of the base in Jiang City could no longer be sent out. I had originally planned to send it tomorrow. Evelyn held my hand tightly, and I tried to draw a little warmth from her hand. We will all survive this time. Connor's face was uncharacteristically serious. We definitely will, Victor said softly. 11. On August 31st, 2023, the zombie horde broke out ahead of schedule in Jiang City, and there were fewer than 1 million survivors in the whole city. The government army quickly organized a search and rescue operation, established a survivor base for Jiang City in the west of the city, and began to actively recruit survivors. We heard all of this on the radio, the day after the apocalypse arrived. The water and electricity supply in Jiang City was cut off, and the photovoltaic power generation and the generator we had prepared came in handy. However, at the same time, our family faced one piece of good news and one piece of bad news. The bad news was that Evelyn, Connor, and Victor had a fever. They had a high fever of 40 degrees Celsius and were bedridden. The good news was that I, the chosen caregiver, was left in this family. With the knowledge from my previous life, I didn't panic. In the first week after the apocalypse, a rare individual mutation occurred among humans. After a high fever reaction, a small number of people obtained various strange physical enhancements. Some people gained enhanced strength and could break a big rock with their bare hands. Some people gained enhanced eyesight and could see a fly hundreds of meters away without the help of tools. In addition, there were some special abilities, such as obtaining a dimensional space like in novels and so on. The superpowers that people awakened were all kinds of strange, and until I was still alive in my previous life, no pattern had been found in the conditions for awakening superpowers. But one thing was certain: all those who awakened superpowers would have a high fever when they awakened. This meant that, except for me, our family would soon luxuriously have 3 superpower users. However, I'm a technical worker. Even without superpowers, it doesn't matter. Humph, every day I racked my brains to make all kinds of fruit and vegetable juices for them according to the nutritional recipes, changing the ways to improve their immunity, according to the order of red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Today it was celery plus balsam pear plus green pepper juice. When I was feeding it to Connor, he still tried to resist, but I suppressed him violently. You little guy, you can't even move, but you still want to be picky. Don't you know how precious fruits and vegetables are now? Victor's pupils dilated in shock when he was lying in bed, but he was smart enough to drink it up by himself. Evelyn gave me a weak glance, and her expression seemed to want to curse, but she also drank it. Tisk, I'm doing all this for your own good. After feeding the bedridden group, I built a small wooden house in the yard and tinkered with some gadgets when I had time. There were occasionally a few wandering zombies outside the villa, and the crossbow could easily shoot them in the head with one shot. Zombies rely on a tiny amount of electric charge in their brains to keep their bodies running. Even if their hearts are dug out, their limbs are severed, or their stomachs are stabbed, as long as their brains can still transmit commands through the spinal neurons, they will still struggle. To kill a zombie, you must either blow up its brain with one shot or decapitate it and sever the spine. It sounds simple, but this is precious experience that countless predecessors in my previous life exchanged with their lives. I thought for a while, sorted out the National Zombie Hunting Standard Code from my previous life, and sent it encrypted to the special channel within the base in Jiang City. 12. On the 3rd day after the apocalypse, when I was on patrol, I found that the special steel lock of the explosion-proof gate seemed to have been pried open. However, when I checked the surveillance, I didn't find anything unusual. It seemed that it was the work of an experienced person who deliberately avoided the surveillance cameras. However, the military explosion-proof gate that we spent a lot of money on wasn't so easy to pry open. Moreover, if he opened this gate, he would be pleasantly surprised to find that, hey, there were still 3 more gates inside. There was no need to guess the person's purpose. After all, with such a huge steel fortress standing here, anyone passing by would be envious. I guessed that this guy would finally choose to climb over the wall to break in. The main function of the high-voltage power grid on the fence was to prevent zombies. If a person put on an insulating suit and made an effort, it wasn't impossible to climb over a 3-meter-high fence. In short, a bit of fun was added to my peaceful life of guarding the house alone. Finally, on the night of the 4th day, a gunshot broke the tranquility of the night. I listened to the gunshot outside the window and my face turned cold. The country would soon recruit special forces teams to go out and clear the zombies and distribute guns to the team members for self-defense. But it wasn't now. The people outside who were trying to attack were a group of desperate criminals. I remembered that after the apocalypse started in my previous life, there was a prison riot. A group of vicious gangsters killed the prison guards and, armed with guns, burned, killed, and looted in Jiang City during the chaos, committing all kinds of atrocities. At that time, the government army didn't have the time to deal with them. Later, when the situation stabilized and the base had the spare capacity to deal with this bunch of trash, this group of pests suddenly disappeared without a trace. Unexpectedly, we would encounter this bunch of trash at this time. 13. I heard there are 2 pretty girls. Hee. When we go in later, kill the men and keep the women for the brothers to have a good time. The yellow-haired guy holding the gun smiled lewdly and spoke obscenities loudly and unbridledly. The group of criminals around him immediately laughed raucously. I sneered in the hidden window, "Have a good time. Let's see if you have the life to enjoy it." The leader of the group frowned unhappily. "Keep your voice down, big brother. What's the big deal about a few weaklings? We have guns." The man didn't say a word, he just gave a cold glance, and the few people who had been bragging and joking just now immediately shut up. It was obvious that he had a great deal of prestige in this group and could easily suppress these vicious and desperate criminals. I frowned and stared closely at the surveillance. Suddenly, he looked at the hidden camera, as if he had discovered me behind the camera. He raised his hand and shot the camera, blowing it up. In the last scene before the screen went black, I saw, under the moonlight, the ferocious scar on the man's eyebrow corner was particularly clear. That scar, many images flashed through my mind. The masked man with the scar who delivered the express to me overlapped with the extremely arrogant face standing at the gate of the base in Jiang City. He was the zombie Damon. I gritted my teeth so hard that my fingertips dug into my flesh, but I didn't feel the pain. The scenes of the base being breached, the wailing of my companions in my ears, the intense pain of being bitten by zombies, all reappeared in my mind. He absolutely couldn't be allowed to get out of here. I recited these words one by one in my heart. The angrier I became, the calmer my mind became. He didn't seem to have fully turned into a zombie yet. An ordinary weapon should still be effective against him. I quickly mixed the liquid agents with my hands and filled the bottles. I lit the fire. The mouths of a row of bottles ignited simultaneously. Several Molotov cocktails were thrown out from the hidden window, along with a few crisp sounds of the wine bottles exploding. The raging fire immediately spread. The compound combustion improver mixed with oil and wine stuck to the bodies of the people who had just been spouting nonsense. In an instant, they turned into several human torches. As they struggled and rolled, the flames spread to their other accomplices. I looked at Damon, who had dodged the Molotov cocktails, with some regret. "So close, go up quickly." Damon, wearing an insulating suit, was climbing on the fence. With a dark face, he shot and killed the subordinates who came up for help with flames on them and shouted at the remaining unharmed people. He was really ruthless. I clicked my tongue in admiration. 14. Damn bitch. She's killed so many of our brothers. When I catch her later, I'll make her life a living hell. The yellow-haired guy's foul-mouthed voice came from the top of the wall. Damon didn't say anything, but his face was also very ugly. It was obvious that these beasts hated me to the core. It didn't matter. I could make TNT by hand. The yellow-haired guy landed and stepped on my vegetable field with one foot. There was a soft, ding sound from the ground. "What's that?" He was stunned. With a dull explosion, the miniature landmine blew up, shooting out hundreds of steel nails in all directions. The nails shot into his forehead with a whoosh. I tilted my head and smiled. Surprise, these homemade weapons were banned in modern warfare, not because they were backward. Another unlucky guy who accidentally stepped right on the landmine had one of his legs blown into the air, and the other half of his body was immediately shot full of holes like a sieve. The high-temperature steel nails shot indiscriminately at everyone within a 10-meter radius around. Damon was quick-witted and grabbed a subordinate to block in front of him. The sharp iron sheet of the bomb still left a bloodstain on his cheek. "It's a pity about the potatoes I just planted. I wonder if there are any left." I walked out of the monitoring room, raised my hand, and turned off the main control switch of the lights. The entire villa on the half-mountain was instantly plunged into darkness as I prepared to welcome the guests. 15 inches the end. Only 2 people were left trying to break in. Damon was using a gun to force that subordinate to open the door. I was hidden in the darkness behind the door. For a moment, I thought they were going to turn on each other. At the same time, the multi-shot crossbow hidden in my sleeve was ready to fire, although the modified short crossbow had a short range. Its instant firing speed was even faster than that of a pistol. Moreover, it wouldn't jam. However, the thing I was expecting didn't happen. Damon still had his prestige. The man obediently kicked the door open. The preset device limited the angle at which the door could open. From the blind spot of vision, I swiftly disarmed the pistol held by the man who had half of his body entering the door. The crossbow completed a door-opening kill with a swoosh. Using the door to block the bullets fired by Damon, I hid back in the darkness again. Under the cover of crackling gunfire, Damon finally entered the steel fortress. "You're very good." In the darkness, Damon's voice suppressing his rage, sounded. I hid carefully. In the darkness, there was a clanging sound at my feet. It was the Coke can I drank in the morning. Turn your head away. A pistol was pressed against my back, so this is why Evelyn always taught me not to litter. Who would have thought that I would die because of an easy-to-throw-away can? I twitched the corners of my mouth, resigned myself to turning my head away, waiting to receive the judgment of fate. What about dodging bullets with my body and seizing the gun in a flash? It doesn't exist. Damn it. In the first half of my life, I only knew how to eat, drink, and have fun. This body is really too weak. Sure enough, as the predecessors said, technicians who do manual labor themselves will be punished. Woohoo, why is there no change even after being reborn? Tears welled up in my eyes, and I was stubborn enough not to cry in front of the enemy. Goodbye, Evelyn, Victor, and Connor. Let's be friends again in the next life. Just as I was making my last words, there were two loud bangs from behind me. I shrank my neck. My head was still there, no pain, and I was still alive. I carefully looked back and found Damon lying on the ground, and the two guys were smiling at me beside him. It was Evelyn and Connor. They were holding two steel rods in their hands and had smashed Damon's head from behind with 2 strikes. I slumped to the ground, gasping for air. While rejoicing at this narrow escape, I couldn't help but curse. Wow, why did you only wake up now? You scared me to death. I thought I was going to die again. It's so hard to have an extra life. Victor helplessly pulled me up from the ground. I got close and smelled the smell of the 3 of them who hadn't bathed for several days. Tears were almost smoked out, so I started crying and cursing at the same time. Your courage is still so small. Connor came to be annoying again. I sobbed and told him to shut up. You talk too much. At this time, just kneel down and kowtow to thank Dad for saving your life. Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Victor was still the reasonable one. I immediately stopped crying and started listing the names of dishes. A foodie never forgets their job no matter where they are. After eating and drinking to our full in the air mixed with the smell of blood, we started to clean up. I kicked Damon's burst head. Even now, it still felt a bit unreal. I never expected that this extremely ferocious and terrifying zombie king from my previous life would actually die under 2 steel rods. Evelyn passed by mopping the floor and gave me a slap. Don't randomly kick dirty things. We decapitated and burned everything outside the yard to prevent any reanimation. With the looted guns and weapons on us, we felt even more secure. 16. After the short-lived joy, life returned to normal. Victor started to seclude himself to continue the research on the virus vaccine from his previous life. After 3 days of trying our dark cuisine without a cook, we finally gave up the idea of continuing to make shit and only relied on instant and convenient food for sustenance every day. After growing crops at home for a few more days and blowing up all the zombies on the mountain, we finally couldn't hold back our desire to cause trouble and prepared to go into the city to blow up zombies. One morning, just as we were pushing each other to decide who would make the fried eggs for breakfast. Hey, don't underestimate this task. It's of great significance to us. After all, this is the only edible source of protein we can make. The door that hadn't been opened for a long time opened. We all looked in unison at the person coming down from the upstairs and asked in unison, has the virus sequence been decoded? Victor shook his head. The process from the previous life has all been restored. For the subsequent work, the computing power here is not enough. Oh, I nodded. This problem couldn't be solved for the time being. But there was a problem that needed to be urgently solved. Brother, I want to eat spicy diced rabbit. My stomach growled at the right time, and I immediately started the mode of clinging to his leg and complaining, you don't know what a hard life your precious one has lived during the days you were researching. They only fed me very salty saltwater boiled noodle paste, half-cooked rice, and burnt fried eggs. Ouch. Evelyn pinched me in embarrassment. The poached eggs mixed with kale that you made when it was your turn to cook weren't any better. Connor immediately fought back. Come on, at least what I made was edible. What you made was beep beep beep. Just looking at it was mental pollution. I didn't back down. Okay, let's cook. Victor rubbed my head. We gathered around the kitchen again to cook together. As an orphan who grew up in an orphanage, I didn't have much to care about in this world, except for my 3 friends. We were all children from the orphanage, and the 4 of us grew up supporting each other. We were not only friends but also family. Finally, the fragrant food was placed on the table. Suddenly, a rustling current sound came from the radio beside us, and then a familiar and gentle female voice. "Hello, citizens of Jiang City. The troops are organizing search and rescue work in an orderly manner and clearing the zombies within the scope of Jiang City. Please don't panic and wait patiently for rescue." We looked at each other, put down the chopsticks in our hands one after another, and gathered together to listen to the radio quietly. Now our homeland is in a time of crisis, and everyone is involved. In this disaster, we have all experienced a lot of sadness, pain, and separation, but we have been moving forward. As long as hope doesn't die, the spark will always remain. This land will surely welcome the warm spring and blooming flowers again. The country was organizing and calling on survivors to go to the base and warmly inviting those with knowledge and skills to actively join the work of zombie clearance and homeland reconstruction. We were also going there. Only the base had professional virus research equipment, but not now. At least we had to finish this meal first. Cheers. I raised the glass filled with sugary cola. Cheers. The 4 glasses clinked. People in the apocalypse were very good at entertaining themselves. Every little bit of happiness in life made people happy. There wasn't much room for sadness here, and people didn't have time to be sad. Just as the radio said, we had been working hard to move forward. As long as hope doesn't die and the spark remains, we will surely welcome the warm spring and blooming flowers again.